Hi, I'm Andy Shalal. I'm the owner of Busboys and Poets. We are so happy to have Rock Newman and the Rock Newman Show join our tribe here. We are a tribe. This is a place where racial and cultural connections are consciously uplifted, a place where art, culture, and politics intentionally collide. This is a space to take a deliberate pause and feed your mind, body, and soul. We believe by creating such a space, we can actually change our community, change D.C., and change the world for the better. And now, the Rock Newman Show. Hi, I'm...
Good morning. Saturday, September the 7th, 2013. I am Rock Newman. We're broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We have a wonderful show for you today. I will go down the list. I'd like to invite you, before I do that, to share with your family and friends. Call them up, let them know that they can see this program, this broadcast, anywhere in the world. Go to rocknewmanshow.com, and they will be able to pick us up, again, anywhere all around the globe. Again, Saturday, September the 7th, the Rock Newman Show at Busboys and Poets, broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room. I have with me as our first guest today John Florio. He's an author, a freelance writer, creative consultant for advertising, television, and music, and he is the author of One Punch from the Promised Land, Leon Spinks, Michael Spinks, and the Myth of the Heavyweight Title. Now, obviously, if we're talking about boxing and Michael Spinks and Leon Spinks, we're talking about sports. But in reality, this is much more than just a sports show. It is about culture. It is about politics. It's about poverty. It's about rags to riches and sometimes back to rags. It's Horatio Algiers wrapped up in two. A fascinating story. Great research that John Florio and his wife, Gweezy Shapiro, have put together. And I encourage you. I think it would make a fascinating read, a wonderful story, much sports in it, much boxing in it, but goes way beyond sports and way beyond boxing, a fascinating read. In the 10 o'clock hour, we're going to be joined by Eric Moses. He is the Senior Vice President and Managing Director for the Washington, D.C. Sports and Entertainment Commission. And he will be talking to us today. There is a big game in town. It is Howard University versus Morehouse. Howard is going to win, as they've won in the past, and as they will win every time they ever play. You hear what I said? Howard University will beat Morehouse every time they ever play. And if 60 minutes run out today or any other time, and Howard is behind, they'll catch up in the next game and they'll win. Mark my word. Mark my word. Well, he's going to talk to us. That now is being called the Nation's Classic. And it is growing. It's growing in attendance. It's growing in sponsorship. It's growing in appeal across the board. And not only will he talk about today's big game, he also will be talking about all things entertainment and sports on the horizon in the Washington, D.C. area. So Eric Moses will join us at 10 o'clock. And in the 11 o'clock hour will be Dr. John Ellis. Dr. Ellis is an adjunct professor at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care, a Harvard grad, a gentleman who lost in excess of 100 pounds. Matter of fact, I think he was about 125 pounds. He did it in a very methodical way, and he will come to talk to all of us about how we can achieve our goals in terms of fitness, appearance, weight loss, nutrition, and the rest. Should be fascinating to see a gentleman who is about little less than a third of the size he was just a couple of years ago. And as a medical professional, he will be sharing here on the Rock Newman Show all of his secrets and advice to help you to live a more healthy and happy life. But let's get back to the matter at hand. I thought I'd do this. John Florio writes in the first page of his book, One Punch from the Promised Land, Leon Spinks, Michael Spinks, and the Myth of the Heavyweight title. It says, it started at a dead end in St. Louis, 1 block from the rats, roaches, and junkies roaming the Pruitt-Igoe housing project. Dozens of kids exercised in a square, 1-story brick building with broken plumbing, finicky heat, and a makeshift boxing ring set up on a volleyball court. Now, part of what you said was rats and roaches. And John, before we start with you here, if I might share with you a very quick story.
Please do.
My listening audience and sort of know that I was involved, obviously, in the fight game. I happen to be quoted in your book here, and I'm honored to have been, that happened. But very quickly, one of the funniest stories, and I can't do it anywhere near the justice, but I'll just give it my feeble attempt, that Butch Lewis tells. Butch Lewis, who was really involved in getting Michael Spinks and Leon Spinks out of St. Louis. Right. Initially to be involved with a promotional company he was with that was headed up by Bob Arum. Right. But he goes there. Arum dared not go to Pruitt-Igoe. Right. he wouldn't know his way around Pruitt-Igoe, but Ronald Butch Lewis knew his way around most places. So he goes to see the Spinks brothers, and before he gets to really have anything of substance to say to them, he's got to go through the mom. He's got to go through Kay Spinks. Mm-hmm. So he's sitting at the table. And when I read that first line there, it made me think about that story. He's sitting at the table, and Butch Lewis, as you know, was a very flamboyant dresser. So he goes there in his white two-piece suit, and he doesn't have a shirt on. Mm-hmm. That was his signature style.
The chocolate tuxedo is what he called that.
Yes. So he goes and he meets Mrs. Spinks to talk to Leon. He's nervous. He's a younger guy at the time, but this would be a big score for him and for his partner, Bob Arum. He's sitting at the table and trying to be his charming self. There's no air conditioning. It's in August in St. Louis. Hot and humid, and he's sweating profusely. And all of a sudden, he sees the largest roach he's ever seen in his life coming, not running away from him, but coming towards him. And he starts to fidget. And Butch was a person that was, spooked by little birds. He was spooked by little things. He'd go toe-to-toe with 6'4", 275-pound Don King. But a little roach, it really freaked him out. This roach ran up his pants leg, on the inside of his pants leg. And so he's talking to Mrs. Spinks. He didn't want her to know that what was happening and how he was freaking out. So he reached down and he grabbed his pants leg and smashed the roach on his leg and tried to continue the rest of that discussion as the roach, piece by piece, sort of fell down his pants leg. So when you say it started where the rats and roaches were, Butch Lewis, if he were here today, would say amen.
Well, the thing about Butch Lewis that everybody says is that the deal came first. So whatever was going on around him, he was going to make that deal happen.
No question about it. He was an intense, tough competitor. I think Butch finished high school, but he's another person. I've talked about a friend of mine recently who, didn't have a great formal education, but was one of the smartest people I ever saw. Butch Lewis was an incredible negotiator. His father, he grew up sort of in the car business. His father was a used car salesman.
Right. Yeah.
And he brought those skills to bear with in his relationship with Joe Frazier, and certainly with the Spinks brothers. Well, thank you so much. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Great to be here.
All right. Tell me, what prompted you, what fascinated you to the point that you would put the kind of time, effort, energy, finances that it took to bring this book to life? What was so fascinating about this story that just hooked you?
Well, it wasn't actually my idea, but Wheezy's idea to do a story on the Spinks brothers, and she's a documentarian and thought originally...
Excuse me one second, and just to repeat and to sort of reset, Wheezy is his wife, not Sherman Hemsley. Not the one that's moving on up, but the one that's staying right there with John Florio.
John Florio and Wheezy Shapiro,
yes.
Right. Well, Wheezy had the idea. She's a documentarian. She said, the Spinks brothers are an interesting story. Nobody's ever told this story before. And as she was talking about it, I think a lot of people had the reaction, well, we know that story. We know the story of somebody coming up in the type of environment you just described at Pruitt-Igoe, right? And then they win the heavyweight championship and they make their money, and then, what happens then? Do they keep it? And, but the interesting thing about this story was that she looked at it, and then, I had me look at it as a story of two brothers completely opposite.
Yeah.
Coming out of the same place. And then you can really kind of do a comparison between the way two people handled the fame, the success, the money, and then what the results are. Because Leon was the more conventional, typical story, in that he came out, he made a lot of money, and then he went through the money.
Yeah.
But then you would look at Leon and you'd say, well, why not, if somebody did this, and you outlined 5 things they should, I don't know, I'm picking the number 5, but you hold on to your money. You're careful with your money. You don't stay in the game too long. You laid it all out. You're conservative. You stay out of the limelight. Things would have happened differently. And that's what Michael did. And then you look at it and you say, well, you have these 2 control experiments. I don't want to refer to them as experiments, but you have these 2 control groups. Yeah. And you say, well, what happened to the 2 of them?
Right.
So we started looking at it and saying, well, they grew up in Pruitt-Igoe and they were looking at the champions. Ali at the time was their champ.
Sure.
The way most kids did. There was also Foreman and Frazier were big at that era, too. There was that whole golden heavyweight era.
Yes.
And did the title give back to them what it promised when they saw those guys carrying the belt?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about, it's very clear. They are brothers. They grew up in the same area.
Right.
Oh, my God, how different they were. And the difference even grew after Leon came on the scene like a meteor.
Right.
Leon Spinks won the gold medal,
right?
1976, and it's not. Some people say arguably. I said it's not an argument. It's the greatest boxing team, amateur boxing team that the U.S. has ever sent
Without
to the
question.
Olympics.
Yeah.
You had Michael Spinks,
and
Leon Spinks, Sugar Ray Leonard, Randolph, Derek Holmes. I'm missing
Howard Davis.
Howard Davis, a tremendous fighter from New York. I mean, truly one of the great the greatest boxing team I think that the U.S. has ever sent to the Olympics. So Leon came out of the Olympics, and we're going to go to some of the backstory, but just to talk about, give a frame here as to the difference. In my observation is Leon came out of the Olympics. He had 7 professional fights. And he fought Muhammad Ali, the most famous person in the world, for the title. And there was a perfect storm.
Sure.
There was absolutely a perfect storm when he fought Ali.
Well, you had Ali getting older, looking for a fight that he thought would be a cakewalk, really. I mean, he never expected to get the fight out of Leon that he did. So, and he was at the end of his career, possibly already physically compromised. I mean, there's no real distinction as to when the things, he has Parkinson's syndrome now. Did it start then? We don't know, but we know that he was already slowing down. And you have Leon really coming out of the Olympics, 7 fights. You have Butch Lewis in the picture, right? And he's trying to make this fight happen. So you put the 2 of them in the ring. You've got Leon coming on at his absolute peak. I mean, he really peaked very early.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why is probably because he didn't train a lot. He didn't keep a lot of that natural skill and hone it.
Right.
But he came out, they used to call him the Wild Bull of Camp Lejeune when he was in the Marines.
Right.
And he was the Wild Bull that night. He barely jabbed. I mean, he's just throwing punches.
And nonstop.
Yeah.
Absolutely nonstop.
And what George Benton in his corner had him doing was Ali would do that rope-a-dope that
Yeah.
he tried against Foreman,
Yeah.
and he'd stand there and he'd let the boxer punch away. But what Benton told him to do was, he said, you're so powerful, you throw all these punches, keep hitting them on the arms.
Yeah.
And eventually those arms are going to come down, and
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah.
So you had, the perfect storm is you got Leon coming up. He had just won the gold medal. So he's got some buzz about him.
Yeah.
You have Ali looking for an easy fight. He can maybe fight somebody who's got a little buzz because he was the gold medal winner. And you got somebody on the decline and somebody on the rise. And it just happened at that moment to work out.
I'll never forget watching that fight, seeing Howard Cosell talking about Ali, who seemed to have lost his edge, who seemed to have lost a step or two. And that fighting Marine, that absolute fighting machine, the fighting Marine. And I remember this term, with a body of tempered steel, is how Howard Cosell described him
sounds like
that
Howard.
night.
Yeah.
He was at the top of his game. He was so fit and chiseled that night. They had been able to corral him from what had been his natural instincts to get him prepared. And then again, the challenge of fighting the greatest.
Right.
Even Leon Spinks paid a little bit of attention to that. Leon didn't pay a lot of attention to most things, but he paid a little bit of attention to that.
Well, one of the interesting things about Leon and his relationship with Ali, or what he thought of Ali, really came out in the second fight after he lost. Leon won in February.
Yeah.
And then he had, till September, he, really enjoyed himself.
Yeah.
And then he had the fight in September where he lost the title back to Ali. And, pretty much everybody says he didn't train. He really never trained very hard.
I'll tell you what, we're going to come back to that fight. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back after a few messages and continue with this fascinating story. Michael and Leon Spinks, one punch from the promised land and the myth of the heavyweight title.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra. Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
And now, The Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. Today is Saturday, September the 7th, and another spectacular day in Washington, D.C., in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Look on my Facebook page. Friend me and look on my Facebook page. You'll see some beautiful sunrises this morning, like the Rock Newman Show page. Feel free to do that. It is September the 7th, and my guest this hour is John Florio. He's the author, freelance writer, creative consultant for advertising, television, and music. And he and his wife, Weezy Shapiro, have written One Punch from the Promised Land, Leon Spinks and Michael Spinks, and the Myth of the Heavyweight Title. We went to break. We were talking about Leon Spinks having come out, and after having won the gold medal, 1976, he had 7 professional fights, and then he fought against the greatest, Muhammad Ali. 3 rounds of fighting by, as I said, Howard Cosell called him the lean, mean fighting machine, the fighting Marine. He fought Ali and won a decision. Absolutely shocked the world. I don't forget what the odds were, but they were tremendous, as they would have been. The legend Muhammad Ali fighting against the upstart guy with just 7 professional fights, Leon Spinks, arguably one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. So Leon goes to win that fight. He signs for an extraordinarily lucrative rematch, a match that's in the Superdome in New Orleans. And Leon comes to that fight, and you had started to talk about it.
Yeah, well, that fight they billed as the Battle of New Orleans.
Yes.
And he came out, and he was not, he was able to kind of conjure up that old Wild Bull of Camp Lejeune for the first fight. But I think after the extended partying and celebrating of winning the title, he came in and was not really the same. It didn't have the same stamina. He wasn't able to overcome all the partying, I think, in the second fight.
Go ahead. Let me just say something. Partying, not of biblical proportions, but of mythical proportions. Leon Spinks got some money in his pocket.
The stories are
and
unbelievable.
Freaky Deaky got his Freaky Deaky on the entire time. It seems as if his greater focus wasn't beating Muhammad Ali in the match. It was having a good time getting to that match.
Well, yeah, that second fight. I mean, there's stories before the first fight that he was partying like crazy, but before the second fight, they weren't able to really find him the day of the fight. Yeah. I mean, his wife Nova went out looking for him and ended up found him in a hotel. He's due to be in the dressing room in about an hour.
Yeah.
He's in there. He's been partying. He's not alone. So he's got a domestic dispute on his hands too. She takes.
This is the Rock Newman Show. You can tell the whole story.
Oh, well, but I don't know many details. But there was a woman in the room, and he wasn't ready to fight. I can tell you that.
And it wasn't the maid.
Yeah, and it wasn't the maid. Exactly.
Or it might have been the maid, but she wasn't just the maid that day.
Not that day. Nova brings Leon to the dressing room.
Yeah.
His corner's in such disarray at this point because he really hasn't been training. They don't really have a way of going at Ali for the second fight. They didn't really have a strategy because Leon wasn't around to even train. So he comes into the dressing room, and they said, all right, we got to get you out there. Somebody get Leon a cup. And where's Leon's cup? So somebody turns, another one of the helpers, the corner guys turns and says, get Leon a cup for some ice, with some ice in it.
Right.
I said, not a cup with ice. We need a cup. A
protector.
A protector that a boxer, that would be the one thing a boxer would have when he's getting ready, right?
Hey.
So they said, well, we don't have Leon's cup. We have to find like a cup. So they ended up getting the cup that Mike Rossman had just used fighting Victor Galindez. He came off, and an intern goes running in there, or one of the helpers goes running in there and says, "Do you have a cup?" He goes, "Well, I only have the one that I just wore for the fight." And he said, give it to me. Leon's got to wear it. So Leon's wearing a used. He's the champion of the world.
Yes.
And he's going in and fighting Ali,
right.
and he doesn't even have a cup in his corner. So that gives you an idea of the state of affairs.
Yes.
He had a few handlers that were kind of arguing over who was in control.
Right.
So they decided, Sam Solomon was the head corner guy, but he said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate. So I'll take a round, then George Benton will take a round. Michael will step in for a round, and we'll rotate through the fight. So Benton, by the 5th round, said, I don't even know who's talking to him anymore, and he quit. He just walked out in the middle of the fight. He wasn't even there anymore.
Georgie Benton, a great trainer.
Tremendous mind, yeah.
Out of Philadelphia, a tactician extraordinaire. But there being so much chaos at that point. And Georgie Benton was a consummate professional, former fighter, very good fighter. And he simply could not take the madness of what was going on in Leon's first defense of the heavyweight championship of the world, the biggest prize in all the sports.
Right, and decides in the middle, this isn't for me. Yeah. Right. So Leon goes on to lose the fight. But we were talking before about Leon and Ali, and that's what started this conversation, like Leon's respect for Ali. At the end of the fight, they announced that Ali is the champ, and Leon's the guy who goes over and holds Ali's hand in the air.
Right.
And, we asked a lot of people, what do you think? We asked Leon, why would you do that? Seems not typical. And he said, he says, I did it out of respect. Okay. But in the book, we spoke with a lot of people. We spoke with psychologists. We spoke with other people who were in his corner, why he did that. And in some ways, you could almost say on a certain level, like he kind of felt things were back the way they should be. Like, you're the champ,
there's
Ali.
Some order.
Yeah, there's some order back in his life. Yes. Ali's the champ. When Ali's the champ, there's order in my life. This is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll say something because I know Leon. I was around him for a period of time as I was involved in the career of Michael Spinks over the course of a couple of years after Michael won the heavyweight title. I was closely involved with Michael. And so therefore, you had opportunity to be around Leon and some of the other family. And for all of Leon's wild partying and insanity, beneath the madness was simply a really nice guy.
No question.
So him going across that ring, I mean, that's insightful. I think if psychologists or whoever might have said it, that he felt, because he didn't just go over and pick Ali's hand up. He was enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
And so that reading that perhaps on some deeper psychological level, this is how things are supposed to be, and so therefore I'm relieved. Let me raise the hand of the real champ because I'm not.
Yeah, well, the thing you would expect is somebody goes over and shakes somebody's hand and says, good fight.
Yeah.
This is not shaking somebody's hand. When you're lifting somebody's hand in the air, you're saying you're the champ.
Yeah.
And you came in champ.
Yes.
And you're leaving, he's champ, and you're kind of saying to the crowd, here's the champion. It's kind of a telling gesture, more than a handshake.
So often, athletes, whether they be basketball players, baseball players, football players, boxers, they define themselves, unfortunately most times, as just that, as a baseball player. Their sense of identity gets totally wrapped up in what it is they are doing, the job that they're doing. They become that person. They become that baseball player, that guy that's got to hit 300, the guy that's got to knock somebody out. Again, in an interesting way, Leon Spinks never became the champion. He never bought into,
champion,
for better or for worse. He never bought into that. One thing about him is he remained the same. Now, the same was wild, crazy, undisciplined. None of the money, none of any of that ever changed his nature. And as I say, for better or for worse, because certainly the argument can be made is that, you get that kind of prize, you come into that kind of money, you establish some discipline and be able to hold and set yourself for life. Leon only looked forward to the next party.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing is he had the misfortune of winning the title at a point in our history and the nation's culture when the champion carried a lot of projections. You're coming off of, Joe Louis, obviously, but you're coming off of Ali, so you have this succession of champions. Ali here it really stood for some issues. He's had political views, he had religious views,
sure.
racial rights he stood up for. And now you have Leon, who doesn't really stand up for any of that. And then the issue becomes, why does the heavyweight champion of the world need to stand up for those things? But at that point, it was expected. And I think society looked at Leon and was disappointed that all he thought of himself as was a boxer.
Oh, no question about it.
So society didn't buy into him as champion.
And when I say that this story transcends just boxing, to make your point there, Jack Johnson had to fight against just rabid racism and exclusion. He came in, he was the first black heavyweight champion.
Sure.
And all the politics around that and all the racism around that. And, when he won a fight and there were race riots. And finally, when he lost in Havana, Cuba, to a white individual, it gave white Americans, that sense of supremacy once again, but also the segregation, and not another black champion until Joe Louis came on. Right. And then that was so meaningful in itself. Joe Louis had lost to Max Schmeling of the Hitler from Germany.
Sure.
And so he had lost to him, and then he came back and avenged it with a brutal first-round knockout, which gave America bragging rights. America all of a sudden claimed the Brown Bomber and gave bragging rights, but didn't give voting rights or anything like that. So Joe Louis went 12 years as the champion, longest reign in the heavyweight division. And then on and on and on, Rocky Marciano became the champion, and Jersey Joe Walcott, Ezra Charles beat him, and then Jersey Joe Walcott became the oldest man ever to win the heavyweight title. And so it always had meant something significant, and especially when Muhammad Ali came on the scene. Yes.
Right. And here's Leon right after Ali.
Yeah.
And the stories, like you said, could always be built around those guys.
Yes.
The media could build a story around Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling. I mean, that was an easy one at the time, right?
Sure.
But you could build stories even around Sonny Liston. I mean, you could build stories around all of these people, Patterson. But Leon, they started out saying, we can. The promoters thought, we're going to position him, as they would say in the ad world, we're going to position him as the regular guy, because after Ali...
Yeah, he had been a Marine.
Yeah,
I remember
he had been a Marine.
Right.
He grew up, he represented the everyday guy, the everyday working guy, blue-collar, working class. And... But the fact is, he wasn't able to really even, in the long run, they said, we can't get him to show up where he needs to be. They couldn't get any quotes out of him. And after a while, I think they thought, the endorsements and all of that and the building of that story in the media wasn't going to happen because he wasn't ready to carry any story.
Yeah. Leon just became fodder for late night comedians. I mean, and Richard Pryor has a whole routine about...
That routine's in the book, as a matter of fact.
About Leon. Folks, this is really a fascinating book. Okay, so Leon, one thing that happens in that fight, I forget what his purse was, but it was millions of dollars in what would have been 1978. 1978, Leon came upon
over 3.1, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, he had a lot of money, and it went very quickly. And on that fight, and every time Leon fought, Michael would fight also. Right. Now, Michael would fight for a much smaller purse, obviously. Leon's fighting for the heavyweight championship. But in the time that Leon fought for the title, won the title, and then lost the title, he went through, in essence, what was nearly $4 million a year after that. By 1979, 1980, Leon was basically broke again. And so little brother Michael, who was much more the introvert, has a front row seat watching his big brother collapse, and part of it being money, and part of it being hangers-on and leeches. And so Michael, seeing this and living through this, wanted to make sure that that never happened to him.
Right. And he came out of it not really trusting anybody. You know, he was watching those fights. Initially, when Leon first started, he wasn't going to go pro at all, Michael. Then he went pro, and he said, I'm kind of going pro to keep my eye on Leon.
Yeah.
But then he decided, all right, I'm going to start pursuing this more seriously. And it was a little later in his career. He had met Sandy Massey, who he had, and he had his daughter Michelle. And he said, I'm going to take this more seriously. He started fighting more frequently. And he was starting to get bigger purses. Now, he was a light heavyweight. This is another issue in the book is, that light heavyweight versus heavyweight, the money difference, the projections of America onto the heavyweight title versus the light heavyweight.
Sure.
But he started taking it more seriously and was very careful to only trust one person, and that was Butch Lewis.
Yes.
You mentioned Leon was a nice guy, and he was a great guy. And he was so nice, he would trust anybody who came up to him.
Absolutely.
He went through a lot of that money that you mentioned between the fights. He had a large entourage, like the size of Sugar Ray Robinson's, who started the entourage thing.
Yeah.
But Leon didn't even know a lot of the people in his entourage. At least with Robinson, he had his friends in it.
Yeah.
So Michael's watching this, and he trusts only Butch Lewis. And then that leads us to the question of what the heavyweight title brought Michael and the disappointment he had later on when Butch Lewis passed away, where that money had gone. We'll get to that.
Yeah,
right?
we'll get to that. Before we go to this break, though, you bring up about Leon's entourage. And I had a couple of people through my time in boxing tell the same story, which to me gives it a sense of validity. Is that night in New Orleans when Leon defended the heavyweight title against Muhammad Ali. They said it was the single largest entourage. You couldn't get in the dressing room for all the people that were hanging on.
Right.
And after that fight, Leon's bruised and battered, somewhat bloody body coming out of the locker room and trying to get back to the hotel. He ended up catching a cab by himself.
Yeah.
I've had more than one writer to tell me about them watching Leon Spinks walk up with this gazillion of people hanging on to him. And then when
immediately after the fight,
immediately after,
he was alone.
He was a lone, solitary figure.
Yeah. Lou Duva, we have a quote of Lou Duva.
That's a fascinating story we'll come back to. We'll take a break here on the Rock Newman Show and come back. Tell your friends to look in and watch out. We've got more for you coming back just after these messages.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've gotten based on the sale price of the car you choose. I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
That was a nice touch. Somebody, one of the production team just rang the bell.
I thought I heard a boxing
Nice
bell.
touch, nice touch, nice touch. This is the Rock Newman Show. Today is Saturday, September the 7th. We're broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room. And I want to tell you something. Every single time I say that, broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room, the stage of the Langston Hughes Room, I feel real good about that. Here at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, come on down and join us for breakfast. We have in studio with me right now John Florio, who is the co-author of One Punch from the Promised Land, Leon and Michael Spinks and the Myth of the Heavyweight Title, a fascinating read, a fascinating story. He really brings their journey, their struggle, their championship trials, tribulations, and triumph to life. Joining us in the next hour is going to be Eric Moses, Senior Vice President, Managing Director of Sports and Entertainment at Event DC, and the really sort of one of the architects of the nation's classic, the game that is going to be played today between Morehouse College and Howard University. And in the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to have Dr. John Ellis. He is a Harvard graduate, an adjunct professor at University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care, and someone who recently, a couple of years ago, lost over 120 pounds, and he is going to share all of his secrets and the ways for all of us to enjoy a healthier, happy life. So stay tuned. Tell all your friends to look in. We were talking before we went to break about Michael Spinks and Leon and sort of Michael having a bird's eye view of Leon's demise and destruction. Right. And how that helped. He was the more introverted brother anyhow, but how that helped shape his view of the boxing world and those people in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when Leon first won the title, his wife at the time said, if you've ever seen 2 or 3 dogs pulling on a rag, she said, Leon's the rag. Yeah. Talking about him as the champion. Oh. And Michael said it was when Leon first won the title that all the bad things started to happen. Yeah. So I think he decided, I'm not going to be the rag. Yeah. You know, and he only chose one person. And what we were saying before the break was that he chose Butch Lewis. And Butch, you know, managed his career brilliantly. Yeah. You know, he brought him through. First, he won the light heavyweight title. But I think the biggest fight Michael had as light heavyweight was the unification match with Dwight Cowie,
who I happened to represent at the time.
At the time.
That's right.
So, and you told some great stories about that. But that fight was a masterful fight on Michael's part. You know, his the way he approached that fight, the way he approached Cowie. But Butch Lewis throwing that fight, not throwing the fight in boxing means one thing. I mean, putting the fight on. Yeah. Really, it was a great, big, huge fight. They were hoping at the time that fight would take over the heavyweight title in the headlines.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. You know, it was the fight called Battle on the Boardwalk in Atlantic City. If I remember correctly, it was March the 18th, 1980.
Yeah.
No, not March 18th, 1983.
83, but it was March. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, 18th, 1983.
Yeah. And that was by far, at the time, I think the largest payday in light heavyweight history.
It was.
At that time was $300,000 or $400,000, and I'm not exactly sure what Butch and Michael took down, but I know that on the Kwawi side, it was over $1 million that night.
It was over $1 million for both of them.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that for a light heavyweight fight at that point
yeah,
was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was Michael went on to fight. And there was actually a planned rematch. And talk about some of the madness that goes on in boxing. I'll just take the liberty to share this.
Sure.
There was a rematch planned for Kwawi and Spinks in Reno, Nevada, actually. And somewhere about a week before the fight, there was a lot of bad blood between the camps. And Butch Lewis, in all of his bravado, came into one of Dwight's sparring sections, which is not necessarily cool that sort of the enemy comes in, although he's the promoter, but he's still the enemy. So the enemy doesn't, you don't invite the enemy into your training, to let them see what your strategies or what you're doing. Well, Butch shows up. When Dwight turns around from his sparring and sees Butch Lewis in the corner, he comes back, and instead of spitting in the spit bucket, he kicks the spit bucket, and it splashes all over Butch Lewis.
Right.
Not a pretty picture.
And there was never going to be a rematch after that.
The fight actually ultimately was canceled. Actually, Dwight got hurt.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories about that, but Dwight actually got hurt like the next day or so. But
all right, that's interesting.
It's certainly. Again, Leon's demise did so much to shape Michael's outlook on things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. But, one other thing on that Kawi fight, since you were there. The Kawi wanted that rematch afterwards and ended up fighting Leon.
Yes.
And he really made a show when he fought Leon. He embarrassed Leon in the ring.
March the 22nd, 1986, ABC Wide World of Sports.
And we were interviewing him.
That was in Reno also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we speak about that fight, and that was his way. He kind of, he taunted Leon in the ring. He was kind of like bobbing his head and making faces at him, and because he really had Leon outmatched at that point. And we said to him, why'd you do that? He said, well, the people really liked it. And then we said, well, did it have anything to do with the fact that you weren't getting it? And he said, all right. I wanted the rematch.
Yeah.
I wanted the rematch.
Yeah.
He wanted to get Michael so upset with him.
No question about it.
That he had come out and given him that rematch.
No question about it. Dwight really trained hard for that fight. He had some real struggles. And again, coming back to Leon for just a second, because that's something I was very intimately involved with, that particular fight. One morning, and I think we tell this in the story.
I think so, yeah.
Quickly, one morning about 4 o'clock, out in the cold Reno air, I go up, start up the van to take Dwight and a couple of the sparring partners to the place where they'll run. Well, when I'm going out to the van,
it's in there
at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Leon is coming in, and I noticed, he's reeking of alcohol up until that time. I was very nervous. And this was Dwight's last run, maybe like the Wednesday before the fight. And I was just a nervous wreck because Leon is big and strong, got a big punch. Dwight's not quite as sharp as he was at one point. And so I warmed the car up, but I come back in after I see, just to see what Leon and his camp, did they go up to the room? Well, they're sitting at the blackjack table. And I'm just standing there kind of quietly watching. They are oblivious. And the blackjack dealer was a lady. And so there was a lot of talk around the table, a lot of laughing and everything. So at one point, Leon said to her, do you know who I am? And so she said, no. He said, well, I'm Leon Spinks, And she says, no, you're not Leon Spinks, because he doesn't have any teeth in the front. I'm watching this. This is not a secondhand story. I'm watching this with my own eyes. Leon turns around, pulls his false teeth out, and turns back around and grins at her and says, how you like me now? He was never at a loss for having a good time.
And that story is in the book. And those teeth, there's about 5-10 stories surrounding those teeth in the book. There must be 1 million of them out there.
Yeah.
That was Leon's hallmark, his trademark.
Yeah. The big gap. The big gap tooth smile.
Yeah, the cover of Sports Illustrated. He had that smile with the big.
So Dwight won that fight against Leon. He really was trying to beat Leon in a way and punish him that would make Michael want to come back. Right. But at that point, Michael was actually on to other things. There was the lining up of the light heavyweight champion fighting the heavyweight champion. This is 1986 we're talking about. So, that was 86. That was 86, but Michael had won the title against Larry Holmes. Mm-hmm. And what's in here? You have much in here about the first fight with Holmes?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The light heavyweight champion. There had been many who had tried, light heavyweight champion, who had tried to win the heavyweight. None of them had been successful. Right.
Well, Michael beefed up, obviously. He had been a light heavyweight. And when the weigh-in came, people were surprised. Like, he stepped onto the, he was never a bragger, or Michael. He was never a loudmouth. He never did the trash talk.
Never.
But he shows up, and all of a sudden he's weighing 200 pounds and it's solid muscle, you know. And the guy at the time, the trainer, was Mackie Shilstone. And he said, everybody's stunned that Michael was 200 pounds. He said, but that's actually his walking around weight. Yeah. He's getting down to fight light heavyweight.
At 175.
At 175. Right. So what we had to do was get him down to 175 and then put that weight on in muscle instead of just in, extra weight.
Yeah.
So he actually came in at 200 pounds, which I think even surprised Holmes. And the fight was a close fight.
Yeah.
But of both those fights, the second one was actually the one that was even more questionable. But the first one was a squeaker.
Yeah.
And but his thing, what Michael really said, it was one of the few fights he really enjoyed having. But he would come in, he'd fight, and he'd throw some punches and he'd pull away.
Yeah.
The big question in that fight, if you remember, is why Holmes wasn't throwing his right hand. And everybody said, what happened to his right hand? And we spoke to a number of people. Some said he was just getting older. Some said he had hurt his hand. There were all these different theories about it. But the most interesting thing about that fight was Holmes' reaction afterward, because he was going for Marciano's record at the time.
Correct.
He would have been 49-0.
Correct.
Which nobody had done in boxing.
Yeah.
And he made the comments afterwards about, he was very upset over losing.
He was extraordinarily bitter. He felt as if he had gotten robbed.
Yeah.
And he felt as if the politics of boxing and the politics still in the country at that time had conspired against him
right.
to preserve Rocky Marciano, the white guy's record.
Right. And he said, some of the quotes were, Marciano couldn't carry my jockstrap. He attacked Peter Marciano verbally.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably...
And then he said, and you all can kiss my big black behind, or kiss where the sun don't shine on my big black behind.
Yeah.
Right.
And which didn't win him a lot of fans for the second fight.
Not at all.
But then when the second fight came, then he kind of apologized after that. And I think, maybe in the throes of battle afterwards, he was upset. But then right before that second fight, he made another comment about the judges, the Las Vegas judges, that they were drinking, they were drunk for the fight, they weren't, So he went into the second fight with the judges, and we interviewed them. We interviewed Jerry Roth. We spoke with them, and they said it really doesn't get into your way when you're judging. But in Larry Holmes' mind, it did. So he went in there thinking he needed the knockout. And then in the 14th round in that second fight, he had Michael on the ropes, but he never really went after him for the second fight. I think he had a lot of respect maybe for Michael's punching power.
Right.
We spoke with Richie Giacchetti, who was in Larry Holmes' corner, and he said none of us can understand why he didn't go in and close it right then. He really had Michael on the ropes.
Right.
So Michael came out with those two victories. So instead of Holmes becoming the guy who becomes 49-0, he becomes the first champ to lose to a light heavyweight.
Right.
So he was extremely bitter after that.
You mentioned the name. Mackie Shilstone. That was a transformation for Michael Spinks to go from light heavyweight. He went up to heavyweight at 200 pounds, and he was stronger. And not only was he stronger, it was quicker. He put on muscle, and it was a real testament to the genius of nutrition and conditioning of Mackie Shilstone. And to make this very current today, I'll take credit for this.
Okay.
I actually was the person that introduced Mackie Shilstone to Serena Williams and her mother.
Oh, really?
Mackie Shilstone today is sitting at the U.S. Open with a Serena Williams who was breaking down 5 or 6 years ago, all kind of injuries at sort of a low in her career. And certainly I'm sure that there are a number of things that has helped her career revive itself. But Mackie Shilstone, in my opinion, is at the center stone of that, and as the centerpiece of that. And you see him sitting in the box with Serena's mother literally this week at the U.S. Open.
Well, what he did, I don't know what he does with Serena Williams. What he did with Michael Spinks that was different is he introduced a lot of functional type of exercises. Like he said, you're going to be We're going to throw in, you're going to be punching in bursts, so you're going to use these bands while you're on the bike. And
absolutely.
And then one particular thing that you can point at and say that may have made a real significant difference, he had Michael Spinks jumping onto these plyometric boxes sideways, because that was the way he fought, side to side.
Right. Herky-jerky.
Herky-jerky, right? And then when Holmes tagged him in that 14th round, it really looked like Michael was going to go down. His knee buckled, and it went down toward the canvas, and then he popped back up.
Yes.
And after the round, he came back, and he's pointing at Mackie Shilstone and saying, it was the boxes.
Yes.
It was the boxes, because he practiced that very thing.
Yeah.
So Shilstone really had figured out, these are the exact motions you'll need to make in the fight, and that's what we're going to prepare you to do.
Yeah, and that is absolutely part of his genius. Let me give a little notice to my crew here. We were due to go to a break in a minute, but let's finish this up. I want to take it right up to the top of the hour. So Michael wins those fights, and then he enters into a tournament. Butch Lewis and Don King established the dynamic duo. They enter into this heavyweight tournament because the titles are actually become the heavyweight title becomes splintered, and you got different people with different titles, and so now there is a tournament to unify the title. And I'll kind of make it easy for you and sort of spare the audience all of that, but there's the unification. They're trying to unify the title. Spinks has a title. Tony Tucker, at the time, a real prominent fighter, has a title. And I forget who
I think it was Pinklin Thomas.
Pinklin Thomas had it at one point. Tony Tubbs had it at another point. And so we get to the point where Butch Lewis makes a calculation. He can fight Tony Tubbs, who's, in his opinion, was a lot more formidable and threatening than another guy by the name of Jerry Cooney. And Michael and Butch could make about $3 million fighting Tony Tubbs. And in Butch's mind, he could make about $15 million fighting Jerry Cooney. Butch Lewis, a former car salesman, guess which one he chose? He left the tournament, lots of lawsuits against HBO and the Hilton, which we won. Which there were those lawsuits. Butch won, and ultimately there was the Spinks Cooney fight at the convention center in Atlantic City in 1987, I think.
Michael.
This was after he had fought Stefan Tankstead from Norway.
Michael wasn't looking forward to that Cooney fight. Cooney was a really big guy.
6'7", 260 so pounds.
And, Michael's light heavyweight is his past. And now he's a heavyweight. And he beat Larry Holmes twice. But, you could also say, well, Larry Holmes was at the tail end of his career, as Cooney was at that point, too. Cooney hadn't fought a lot. But Cooney was 6'6". Cooney was like Goliath. This is Davy and Goliath, going in there. And he said, this guy's big. So they asked him, do you ever watch any tapes of Cooney, fight? He said, why? All I see is people going down. Because I'm not going to learn anything, all I'm going to do. It's just frightening the hell out of me. So he said that was the first time he went in to fight a big guy. And I think, you told the story of the cut, right? He gets, Michael's going in there and he's showing a lot of respect for Cooney. And then he gets cut, right? So what happened? You tell the story. You were there.
Michael gets cut. I forget if it's the third or fourth round or whatever it is. And there's a very high-pitched guy, one of the veteran cutmans ever in boxing, one of the best, Percy Richardson out of Trenton, New Jersey. So Michael comes back, and certainly when a fighter gets damaged, gets hurt, you want a cool, calm, collected corner to allow them to collect themselves.
Right.
Percy looks at this deep cut on Michael's forehead and says, "Oh, my God!" And so Michael's eyes got big. But interestingly enough, everyone was upset with Percy. But we think in part it scared Michael so badly that he went out and started attacking Cooney and ultimately knocked him out.
Right,
yeah.
right. And Cooney was coming off he had a lot of personal problems in his life at that point. And he says to this day, Michael had no right being in the ring with me, meaning a true heavyweight, a big guy.
Right.
And but we asked a lot of people about that particular quote, including Mike Tyson, but a number of boxers, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, a lot of guys that we interviewed, Kawi, and they all said, you know, in boxing, you have your chance.
Yeah.
You're in the ring. You lost
right.
the fight. Michael outboxed you.
Yeah.
You got to live with it now.
Right,
You know, if he
right.
doesn't have a right to be in the ring with you, you got to go in there and prove it.
John, this is a fascinating book, man. There's so much more that we could do here. We've come up to already. We're finished with this hour, and we haven't gotten to a bunch that's in here. That means you guys are going to have to buy the book. Go out and get this book, One Punch from the Promised Land, Michael and Leon Spinks and the Myth of the Heavyweight Title, a fascinating read. I suggest you get it. John, got to have you back on the show at some
Pleasure.
point. Thank you so much. This is the Rock Newman Show. Coming up, Eric Moses is going to tell us all about today's big game, Howard University versus Morehouse, and all things sports and entertainment in Washington, D.C. And in the 11 o'clock hour, we have Dr. John Ellis to tell us about his weight loss of 125 pounds. More importantly than just the weight loss, how he has methodically and fairly easily kept it all off, and he wants to teach you how to do the same thing. Tell all your friends to tune in. We'll be back in a moment. All right. Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
My baby drives a handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But what do you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a handcuff.
And now, The Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. It is the 10 o'clock hour of the Rock Newman Show from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets. Call all your friends. We are going to be talking in this hour about the AT&T Nations Classic. I like to say that. I told you earlier in the program that this classic between Howard University and Howard University and Morehouse is getting more and more steam, more and more appeal, more and more people are attracted to it, and it now has a bona fide title sponsor. It's the AT&T Nations Classic. And to talk to us about it is Eric Moses, Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Sports and Entertainment from the D.C. What is that? That's the Washington.
We're Events DC now.
The Events DC to make it short. So I have to try to remember, but
exactly.
It used to be
Washington Convention and Sports Authority.
Okay,
yes,
so now it's Events DC.
Absolutely.
So this event, as a proud, somewhat maniacal, not fully matured Howard University bleed blue bison, I have predicted, like they've won the two or three,
yes,
previous, that Howard University will win this game, and they're going to win them all. And Eric, just so you know, what I said was, in the event that Howard should happen to be behind when the clock runs out, that's just, they won't have lost that game. They'll just have to wait until the next time to catch up and win.
Understood.
So in other words, we ain't never going to lose. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rock.
Thank you for being here. Man, you know, there's so much to talk about, DC sports and entertainment. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
But for right now, let's talk about this classic, Morehouse and Howard University, two powerhouse HBCUs. And talk to me about how this all came together. Because, you know, I sort of been in the business of putting on events. And folks show up, and they have a great time. It's a great fight. It's a great concert. Everybody has a whole bunch of fun. They kick back, and they go home.
Right.
But what goes into one, making it happen and putting it on. So just talk to me a little bit about starting from concept.
Sure. No, one, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that in the early days of trying to figure out whether this thing could work and whether all of the work that you allude to get something like this off the ground was going to be worthwhile, you were one of the main people who contributed some encouragement and enthusiasm to what we were trying to do, and I want to thank you for that at the outset.
Sure.
I said, well, look, if Rock thinks it's a good idea, then I can't be all wrong here. So
checks in the middle.
So really what happened was, I took this job back in 2008, and essentially I'm responsible for running the RFK Stadium campus, which includes the stadium and the D.C. Armory and all the festival grounds around there. Mm-hmm. So, you look at your portfolio of assets and try to figure out what you can do to expand and leverage those assets. And if you got a football stadium but no football being played in it, first things first, let's figure out whether we can get some football back in the stadium.
Sure.
So we started a bowl game back in 2008, which is now called the Military Bowl and sponsored by Northrop Grumman. That was in December at the end of the year, when it can be quite a bit chilly in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I thought, why not book in the college football season and try to start a game in the beginning of the season, late August, early September.
Sure.
And why not make it a black college game, right? We've got the Mecca right here in case
anybody don't know what the Mecca is, it's Howard University. That's the Mecca.
With Howard in our backyard, and they hadn't played in the Howard Hampton Classic in many years, which, as you recall, used to be played at RFK.
Sure.
So we started a little research, did our due diligence as you should do before taking over something like this, and decided that these two teams were probably the best teams for us to bring to Washington for many reasons. One, they hadn't played in almost 15 years, as you and I had discussed.
Right.
Two of the premier brands in the black college world, but frankly, in the world.
In the college world, no question about it.
And three, there are more Morehouse alums, and probably Morehouse and Spelman alums in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area than any other place besides Atlanta.
Yeah.
And so we figured that should give us at least a decent chance to make something out of this game.
Right.
So that was kind of what went into it. And after we talked to President Rabeau and then at the time President Franklin, they were very enthused about the idea of getting this, rejuvenating the rivalry on the field.
Okay, so you, on behalf, basically, so we understand sort of the process here, on behalf of the city, go out to what is the more sort of public-private enterprise to try to bring this event that ultimately, obviously, both schools get exposure, they benefit, but at the end of the day, the citizens of the District of Columbia have an event that is attractive that they can go to, and hopefully there's the kind of attendance that throws off tax revenue and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. As someone, I think I got paid a compliment yesterday when a buddy of mine, who I think you know, Kevin Wynn, said to me, "I heard you on the radio. You sound like Rock Newman out there." I said, "Well, I'll take that as a compliment. I'm out here trying to promote this city as frankly, the #1 place in the country, if not in the world, to have an event, any kind of event."
You know, Eric, one of the things that attracted me greatly to doing this show from this space right here, the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, is the visionary, the founder, the owner of this place, has often talked about how, in his observation, the culture and the dynamics of Washington and the dynamics of the culture of Washington, D.C. is underserved and underpromoted to the rest of the world.
Yes.
And that he wanted to have part of what he was looking for was a platform to say to the rest of the world, to announce to the rest of the world just how great things were in Washington, D.C. And certainly as someone who, bleeds D.C., whatever the colors of D.C. That's right. That's right. I was doing that.
Right.
Part of doing my show east of the river at We Act Radio, 1480 on the AM dial, was indeed highlighting the culture, the sports, and all things good and great about Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. And, I didn't grow up here. My grandparents lived in the area, so I've been coming here for many, many years before I moved here. And I noticed once I became a full-time resident here that we do not do enough to embrace our own, promote our own, and essentially, as you said, announce to the world the greatness of Washington, D.C. I was happy to see some of the tributes that happened when Chuck passed nationally on a national stage.
And when Eric says Chuck's, he's talking about Chuck Brown.
Is there another Chuck?
No, that's a good question right there. Yeah. Chuck Brown. Y'all know Chuck Brown.
Absolutely.
Bustin' loose Chuck Brown.
Absolutely. So I think there's so much richness and heritage in the culture that we have here. As you know, only city in America to have two people in the NBA's 50 greatest list.
That's right.
Elgin
exactly
Baylor
right.
and Dave Bing, gone to the same high school.
That's a Spin Garden High School, taught by Dave Brown, for those of you that might want to know. Let me ask you, wait a minute, you just talked about some history there. I read something this week about the gentleman that established basketball here in the nation's capital. You know what, let's hold that. Let's hold that. Let's come back to that.
Okay.
The Howard Morehouse game is today what time?
3:30. 3:30. But, folks, we're opening the doors at 11. We've got our fan festival kicking off at 11 o'clock. Lots of free food, music, and fun. We're going to have a sound stage out there. It's going to be lots of fun. And I put in the order with the big man upstairs, and he says the weather's going to be beautiful.
Let me tell you something, man. I took some pictures of the sunrise this morning and posted them on Facebook. If the day remains anything like this morning has been, you're going to have an absolutely great day. So tell us about some of the pregame what's going on.
Yeah, the Pepsi Fan Fest starts at 11 o'clock. We've been very fortunate to have Pepsi as one of our sponsors the entire time we've been in this. AT&T will have a big sound stage out there. We have DC's own Raheem Devon will be performing.
Oh, fantastic.
Mambo Sauce will be performing.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some other local talent out there. All of our sponsors are doing giveaways and contests and things like that. You may be able to get your seat upgraded, those kinds of fun things. Lots of tailgating. You know, with the weather like this, our challenge is going to be getting folks out of the parking lot and into the stadium to watch the game. So there's going to be lots of fun out there.
Any sorority or fraternity competition going on?
We don't have a step show this year. You know, the challenge for us being one of the first games of the season is that the students are really just getting back on campus.
Yes.
So that it doesn't lend itself necessarily to those things that require weeks of practice in order to ensure you don't, and in my case, as my Kappa brothers do, is we don't drop any canes while we're out there participating. So no step shows, but who knows what kind of impromptu things may kick off in the parking lot.
And, of course, Eric, you say that it might be a little bit difficult, as beautiful as the day is, to get people from the parking lot into the game. But black college football, in part, is about those rocking bands.
Yep.
And the Howard University used to be the Nifty 50 and the Ooh La La girls. I don't even know what to call them down in Morehouse.
Still got the Ooh La La girls, that's for sure.
Really?
Huh?
Well, you old dirty men, if you want something to do today, if you don't want to watch football, if you don't want to listen to the bands, go watch the Ooh La La girls. I'll guarantee you it's worth the price of admission.
And the cheerleaders aren't bad either on both sides.
Yeah. So how are the teams, you've looked at much in terms of how they're shaping up? Is anyone a favorite? I mean,
they're both young. They're both dominated by underclassmen. And we had an event. We welcome the teams in every year. So Thursday night, Morehouse comes in earlier than Thursday, and we do a dinner just for the teams, for the student athletes, to let them know that this is just not another football game you're playing. We want this city to roll out the red carpet for them, and for this to be an experience that they remember, hopefully for the rest of their lives, and a positive experience. So
when you say you do dinner for the teams,
yeah, just for the players
both
and the coaches, both teams
together, or
together, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And another testament to this friendly, respectful rivalry.
Sure.
I mean, these institutions are in the same game, which is educating young men, in Morehouse's case, and young men and women in Howard's case, most of whom happen to be African American. And they do a great job of that. And I think because of the way that they take that on, these guys, they talk a little bit, but it's not like you would see in kind of what is called major college football in terms of I'm trying to rip that guy's head off. I mean, there's a good respect that goes.
So where did you? It's over with now. Where did you have the dinner?
We took them on the Odyssey and did the dinner cruise.
Oh, how fantastic!
That would be a great opportunity, especially for the gentleman from Morehouse, to see this city and see it at night from the Potomac River was a great experience for everyone.
Folks, right here at Busboys and Poets, and from this table and from this microphone, we love Washington, D.C., and we have no apologies for it. Now, he just mentioned something by name that those of you watching around the world, hello, Patricia in Norway. He just mentioned the Odyssey. And you may not know what the Odyssey is. The Odyssey is a floating restaurant, if you will. Yeah. That has a dance floor, that all kind of entertainment. I don't know, I forget how many people you can put on it. I know 100.
About 800
or 800. Yeah. And it floats from the waterfront in southwest Washington, and it floats down on the Potomac, goes around the point, which is called Haynes Point, lends itself back up the channel, up to what is called Georgetown, and you pass by all the monuments and under the bridges that separate Virginia from Washington, D.C. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm not the most traveled person in the world, but I've been around the world a little bit. Washington, D.C. is singularly the most beautiful city you ever want to visit. We're going to invite you to come on in. Now, this Odyssey trip that he's talking about, they had dinner. So I want you to be aware, those of you who are listening, who hear that name and might not be familiar, is to be familiar with all the good, great, and wonderful things that we have here in Washington, D.C. How was it? How was the dinner?
It was fantastic. The guys had a good time, and we try to make certain we bring some messaging and communication to them that's not just about football. So we interview the coaches, and that's how I know about the underclassmen, and both of them feeling like they've got good young talent, but it's young, and they're looking for the young men to mature. This will be the first game for Morehouse. Howard played against Eastern Michigan last week and played well for three and a half quarters. In fact, we're leading into the fourth quarter against Eastern Michigan, which is a Division 1A, as they used to be called, team. And so, but it went really well. The young men enjoyed the time. I brought on some former black college football players one who is a music producer now and very accomplished, another who's an entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur here in D.C., and let them share some insights from their experience as college athletes and how playing sports, and football in particular, helped them in their personal and professional lives since they've graduated. Trying to make certain, again, that the young men get some messaging that is not just about football, because most of them will not be playing football for a living.
That is absolutely fantastic. We've been talking about the AT&T Nations Classic here on the Rock Newman Show with our guest, Eric Moses. We're going to come back and talk about all things sports and entertainment, Washington, D.C., in just a few moments after these messages. Hello, everybody. I'm Rock Newman from The Rock Newman Show. And I am absolutely flattered to have as one of my fine advertisers the DMV's greatest corporate citizen. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Pohanka Automotive Group. If you have any automotive needs whatsoever, if you want to sell your car, buy a car, trade in your car, have your car serviced, whatever you need, see my good friends at the Pohanka Automotive Group. You will be well taken care of, I promise. I'm Rock Newman. I might be there. Come on down and see our good friends at Pohanka Automotive Group.
baby drives a handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a handcuff.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Folks, welcome back. September the 7th, the Rock Newman Show at Busboys and Ports from the Langston Hughes Room. My guest, Eric Moses, Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Sports and Entertainment for Event DC. And that is an operation, an entity that oversees really a significant amount of what goes on in this city in terms of entertainment and sports. And, you know, when you say entertainment and sports, there's something that's been in the news as of late that has caused me to have a lot of excitement and just thinking about the prospect and the possibility. And that is that in the year 2024, there is talk about where the Olympics are going to be then. And there is talk about whether or not this region, sort of a combination of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area combined with Baltimore, might be able to put together a plan that is attractive enough to host the 2024 Olympics. I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot or anything, Eric, but I'll tell you what, man, talk to us about that initiative.
Well, it is exciting. As you know, the city and the region tried to put in a bid for the 2012 Olympics.
Right.
Years and years and years ago. That
Sure.
was unsuccessful. I think New York was chosen as the U.S. representative at that time, and it ended up in London.
Right.
But huge thing for the region if it could happen. We have some particularly specific challenges in this region because of the high security concerns, given that we are the capital of the free world, as it were.
Yes.
So, but there's a group of folks locally who are pulling together now and trying to see if the money can be raised and the momentum can be gained in order to put forth this area as a host city for the country. Now, the USOC has to decide, you know, how serious it is about making the U.S. a potential candidate for that year. There's a lot of talk that 2024 may go to Africa because the continent of Africa has never hosted an Olympic Games.
Right.
And after South Africa performed so well with the World Cup, which is equally a huge and momentous occasion and event, there's some talk about that. But anytime your region can get the level of investment, we're talking about billions of dollars in order to be able to host something that large for that long, it's very exciting.
Yeah, my Lord, how fantastic would that be?
Yeah, very
well, certainly good luck.
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
I know you guys, the shoulders are to the wheel. You know, it just so happens that right now, the mayor who is in office, Vince Gray, is dyed in the wool Washingtonian.
Absolutely.
And certainly I know that he's doing everything that he possibly can do to help that initiative, to support the initiative. And, you know, it must be, you know, a really good thing to have someone like Mayor Gray who doesn't just sort of come on the scene and, you know, wins an election, but is really sort of rooted in what is good for the city, you know, from a very deeply invested, personal invested kind of relationship with the city.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, he is passionate about this city, about its residents and citizens. And he, frankly, makes all of our jobs easier. I joke with the mayor, and he was with us last night. We had a reception for our sponsors for the Classic, and he kindly came out and gave us much of his time. The great thing about this mayor is the mayor shows up for your event, he's going to stay to the end.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
He didn't do a drive-by.
That's
He's going to stay.
Right.
And he did last night. But he promotes, especially because you know he's a sportsman.
Yes.
You're a former college baseball player at GW. Still plays
So I was
little
gonna say,
ball.
still playing softball
He might be
now.
out there right
Right.
now. Great sportsman, and he promotes this game, and he promotes all of the things that we work on for us, frankly, without us even having to ask. And for someone like me, that makes it feel like the work that you're doing, if the head of the government, the leader of the city, understands how important it is and is willing to talk about it unprompted, it helps a whole lot.
That's a good thing. You know, been in the news a lot lately, D.C. United. D.C. United, currently one of your tenants.
Absolutely.
At RFK. Tell us about what's going on with D.C. United. We're hearing a lot about a new stadium. Bring us up to date.
Very exciting. You know, the mayor likes to say, and I have gotten into the habit of repeating, that we have more of those high, very tall construction cranes in this city than any other city in the country. I was recently in San Francisco on a vacation and in a hotel and looking out amongst the whole downtown city center. I counted 4 cranes.
Yes.
We got 61 cranes in Washington, D.C.
It's...
So to give you an idea of the type of development that continues to happen in this city, that's how many cranes we have. And part of that development we're hoping is going to be a new soccer-specific stadium for D.C. United over near the ballpark, over near Nationals Park in the southwest quadrant of the city. In a place called Buzzards Point.
Sure.
You know, there is a lot left to be done, but the city has been talking to the owners, the new ownership over at DC United, about a 20,000-seat stadium. We do about $150 million between helping to bring the land together and infrastructure, and the stadium, the building itself would probably cost about $150 million. And would do a lot to continue and accelerate the redevelopment of Southwest, which, as you know, is the smallest quadrant of the city, but one that is coming a great way with the ballpark and the yards development that's going on over there. So we're excited.
Eric, would you do this? Help us out here, my listening audience and viewing audience around the world. You know, when someone hears $150 million for football field or for a stadium or soccer stadium, oh man, why would you use, you know, the value of the city coffers to do that? Talk to us about the why and why it's good to do that.
I'm glad you asked that question. I think there are common misperceptions, and I had them also before I got into this line of work, about how a city invests its resources and the choices that cities can make to do so. When we were building Nationals Park, there was a lot of concern among residents about, well, why is the city going to contribute $600 million to build a ballpark? Why don't we spend that money on schools? Why don't we spend that money on, you know, job training? Why don't we spend that money on the plethora of other worthy causes for our residents? And we came up, and I give the credit to Councilmember Vincent Orange, who I think coined this phrase, that he used to call the revenues that we were going to use, the proceeds from the bonds that get sold on Wall Street to finance a project like that, but for baseball revenue. Meaning, were it not for a project like that is a revenue-producing project through ticket sales and concession sales and sponsorship and all the other revenues that come into a building like that, you wouldn't have the bonds and the revenue from the bonds. Because as much as we wish it were different, Wall Street is not necessarily interested in buying bonds to finance school buildings or job training programs.
Reality.
That's just reality. And so I think... So in terms of where the money comes from the private sector and investment from the private sector that usually is paid back with some rate of return with these bonds. Otherwise, the investment is, I think, warranted because what we see is the same thing we've seen with the Verizon Center and that we're seeing with Nationals Park. The increase in tax revenues that occur from all of that activity in those areas now pays the city back hopefully well above what we estimate it will be. And the collection of the collection of those taxes goes a long way towards continuing to make this city one of the healthiest in terms of its economy in the country.
And so it is not at all just about in putting that money in for entertainment's sake, it's good business also.
Absolutely. We're priming the pump in order to be able to bring those dollars back. And frankly, part of my job is, we call it destination marketing.
Sure.
We're selling this city so that we can drive incremental dollars, people like your viewers and listeners from around the world and around the country to come to our city to experience all that we have to offer. And when they do so, they come to a Busboys and Poets and eat dinner here and spend some money.
Right.
They stay in our hotels and spend their money there. They get on our subways and in our taxi cabs. And all of that is new money that would not have otherwise been flowing into the city's coffers in terms of taxes or the businesses.
And so can you, talk to us for a moment about the National Stadium? There was a lot of controversy about that. A lot of people were against, putting that stadium over there. I'm such a, crazy baseball fan until, I thought it worked for multiple reasons, had looked at other, municipalities where, it just was a windfall and thought it was a good idea, always supported it. But can you, for example, just give an example of a night's game over there, and they're playing the Atlanta Braves, which was, one of the rivals. Unfortunately, the team didn't do nearly as well this year.
No.
Because, on paper, they were going to win the World Series. Yep. And, that's why you got to get in the ring. That's why you got to get on the field. Ain't nobody ever won a match on paper.
Right. Or in the preseason.
You got to fight the fight, man.
Right.
But on a good night, for example, what does it mean economically to the city on a good night?
I can give you a specific figure, but, that stadium was built to hold 42,000 people. And on a really good night, there's close to 42,000 people in there.
Been there.
And you figure baseball is still one of those sports, as you know, where you can get a cheap ticket.
Yeah.
You can get an outfield seat for $10.
Right.
But I have to imagine that there are, on a good night, that there is, surely hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, being produced in economic activity from that baseball game, from the parking around the building, from the restaurants where people go before or after the game, from all the money that folks spend buying, if you're like me, buying your kids 2 or 3 different flags or hats or shirts or whatever else it is they ask for before you can get out of there.
Right.
So I think it represents a really strong number in terms of economic activity.
I am really rooting for this DC United at Buzzards Park thing to come. I was in talking about the Nets. And, of course, the Verizon Center downtown with the Wizards. I remember maybe 4 years ago being in Detroit and just seeing a city that was just almost barren and, the morale seemed to be down. I was there for 3 days. Then I went to Chicago. My good friend Kenny Williams is general manager of the Chicago White Sox. And just seeing and feeling sort of the vibrancy of Chicago. And when folks come to D.C. now, there is a vibrancy here that is so palpable that feels good. And Washington, D.C. right now is bringing in 1,100 people a month for many, many months. Folks are flocking here, and they're not flocking here because they're dumb. They're flocking here because they're smart, because it's a great place to be.
Yep.
Busboys and Poets is a great place to be. Come see the Rock Newman Show. You have guests like Eric Moses. We'll come back in just a moment after these messages. Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, The Rock Newman Show.
Folks, we're back wrapping up this hour with Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Sports and Entertainment for Events DC, Eric Moses. It is September the 27th. September the 27th. Today is, you got me excited in here. It is, moving ahead. It is September the 7th, 2013, another spectacular day in the DMV. Eric, we have primarily talked about sports, and there's a lot more that we can talk about with sports and all that's going on in D.C. As a matter of fact, before I move on, because you mentioned the name earlier, and it was Kevin Wynn. And Kevin Wynn is a veteran of the sports world. He was an executive at Madison Square Garden. He is someone, folks, you know, when you go to events, the way you go to events and that there is order, you have tickets. And this guy that he just mentioned, Kevin Wynn, who is now general manager for the Castles, and I'll let Eric talk about the Castles, owned by Mark Ein, one of the great D.C. guys. Talk to us a little bit about the Castles, sort of their record, what's going on. Off air, we were talking about the Southwest waterfront and all that's happening there. So DC Castle, folks, is a world
team tennis.
World team tennis, right.
Yeah, the Washington Castles, and you are right, and I should start there. Mark Ein, a D.C. guy, venture capitalist by vocation, been very successful in his business world, but a tennis nut.
Straight up nut. No question about it.
And has put his money where his mouth is
Sure.
by investing in this team and bringing a world team tennis team, the Washington Castles, to D.C. They are a 3-time champion, 3 in a row, had the longest winning streak in U.S. professional sports history.
Yeah, it was owned by the Lakers.
It was owned by the Lakers, 71-72 Lakers.
33 straight wins.
Yep, and they won 34.
Yeah.
And then lost right after that, but won the championship again this year.
Right.
And Mark is just a great guy. I mean, he does that franchise does does so much for Washington, D.C., and for our young people, and for, frankly, for young folks of color who don't always get introduced to sports like tennis naturally.
Sure.
And he does a lot with the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center and Cora Masters Barrier, I'm sure our mutual friend.
Yeah, they were here last week.
Excellent.
They were here last week with the kids who performed at the White House portraying
Blacks and Wax.
Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Dorothy Height, Barack Obama. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. They do some great work.
Bayard Rustin,
And people like Mark and that team really help to continue to contribute and encourage that kind of thing. But the team is fantastic. And what they have done, they've almost merged sports and entertainment for us here in D.C.
Right.
They had their stadium down at the Southwest Waterfront. So imagine going to a 3,000-seat stadium to watch tennis. It's one court. The sun's going down over the Potomac.
That's right.
You got a breeze off of the river.
That's right.
You get to see the monuments behind you. It's a wonderful scene to watch things. And then, oh, by the way, is that the First Lady and her daughters watching the game? Oh, yeah. Is that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over there? Oh, yes, it is.
Serena,
is that Rock Newman over there? Oh, yes, it is.
Serena.
And Serena's on the court, or Venus. And so it has been a fantastic contribution to this city and lots of fun during the month of July in Washington, D.C.
And now, we talk about the Castles and their stadium is down on Main Avenue. Anybody familiar with Washington, D.C. knows that's where the wharf. If you go, you go to the wharf in Washington, D.C. and get some of the best seafood in the world. However, that waterfront is going to change dramatically.
It is. P.N. Hoffman, local developer, and his partners, Monty Hoffman's partners, are redeveloping that whole stretch from the wharf all the way down. And as we were noting off air, Washington, D.C. has underutilized its waterfront for far too long. And I think this development may be the largest waterfront development on the Eastern Seaboard. And so it is going to add immensely to the entertainment opportunities, to the living opportunities. I was just in Vancouver on a vacation, and the way they use their waterfront, the way they put those high rises there and restaurants on the waterfront. Water is an amenity that not every city has.
That's right.
And if you don't use it properly, shame on you.
Yes.
And so our city has gotten it and understood that, and with all this development, that's going to be a fantastic new development.
Probably something we won't be able to duplicate what they do in Vancouver, but having been in Vancouver and seen those little hydroplanes come in, fly in and land in the water, man, that's a really, really special thing.
It's quite a sight. Beautiful city, city, and the mountains and the water, and it's a fantastic city.
Yeah. So now we talk again. I was starting to say when we talked about the Castles, we've talked primarily about sports, but there is a lot of entertainment that's going on in Washington, D.C. The venues that people know about, for example, the reemergence of the Howard Theater, is just an anchor in what we call the Shaw community. So, folks know about that. They know about the Kennedy Center. They know about the Warner Theater. They might know about the Lincoln Theater. But, man, you see along the way the new Arena Stage Theaters, absolutely a spectacular venue. And you see, Shakespeare theaters on 7th Street popping up. Now, how much involvement do you all have in all of that participation, if any?
We have some. I mean, we look to make certain, if nothing else, that our visitors and our residents who are looking for entertainment options understand what's there. I mean, as you said earlier in the show, a big part of what you have to do is tell people what you have.
Sure.
What's out there for them to experience. So we do a lot of that in making our visitors aware of those options. The Verizon Center has, one of the busiest buildings in the country, and for music as well as the sports teams that call it their home. And so we promote that. We do quite a few festivals out at RFK, at our festival grounds.
You know what, Eric? Let me stop you for a second. Excuse me. You mentioned the Verizon Center. And, the Verizon Center, like any signature center in any big municipality, obviously hosts the professional basketball teams, the Capitol and the Wizards and the Mystics. And they host, it doesn't matter.
Georgetown.
They host Georgetown. They host Beyonce. They host Elton John, whoever it might be. But let me tell you something that I had an opportunity to participate in the other day. And again, my unapologetic, unabashed enthusiasm and love for this city. This was a small slice of it, but to me, something that was extraordinarily heartwarming. You're talking about the Verizon Center and the Wizards and the Capitol. They hosted an event. There was a Mystics game going on. And prior to that Mystics game, they set up with this organization of black men, 50 black men and their daughters, to have a complete tour of the center. They went down into the locker rooms. They went up into the meeting rooms. They got an opportunity to see how the front end office worked. And it was a time of bonding. You know, in our community, much too often, you know, the maligned is the black man. Mm-hmm. And man, to be over there and to see these committed fathers with their loving daughters. And I had opportunity to speak to them. And of course, I asked the pivotal question, the stuff-starting question. Okay, all 50 of you are in here, dads, and there must have been probably 75 kids, 75 girls. And I asked the question, who's got the greatest dad in here? And man, they sounded off. And you saw the affection and the love. But in terms of the Verizon Center, you think about the big things, and folks don't have an opportunity to see those kinds of things.
Yeah, David Toohey, who's the general manager over there, and that whole team do a great job of really trying to use a building that's as busy as you say as it is as a community asset, and as much as you can do that given their schedule.
Sure.
We host the city championship basketball game over there, which, high school kids playing in the NBA arena, that's a pretty big deal.
That's right.
I think that, frankly, was a thing that started under Abe Poland, God rest his soul, the longtime owner of the Wizards and the man who built the Verizon Center, and Mayor Gray, when he was a council member, he was the chair of the council, basically said this makes sense, and we have to continue to elevate sports and youth sports in Washington, D.C., and what better way than to play our city championship in the crown jewel of an arena that we have here. And so that's been going on for several years. So, yeah, they do a great job over there. We're a big sponsor of the Washington International Horse Show, which is a singular in terms of horse shows in the country, probably the only urban horse show, equestrian jumping show in the country, if not in the world. And so there's so much. There's just, I'm like you. There's so much to sell about my city. I feel like, sometimes it's not fair.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Eric, tell me, man, a magical something that happened, and, Lord knows I have no objectivity about this whatsoever. I'm highly biased. I'm going to use that word again, unapologetically, highly biased. But sort of the reopening of the Howard Theater.
Huge deal. And I was there last night. We had an event there last night. So ingrained in the history of this city. For those who are not familiar with Washington and its history, the Shaw area and U Street in particular, you have it anchored in some way by Howard University.
Right.
U Street was called Black Broadway.
Black Broadway.
I had to tell some people last night that the Howard Theater was the Apollo before the Apollo
before
was the
Apollo.
The Howard Theater was built for African Americans and performers to go
right.
see shows.
Right.
The Apollo was not.
Yeah.
It turned into a black theater, but it didn't start off that way.
That's right.
And the redevelopment that Chip Ellis and his family have done over there is just breathtaking. I mean, when you go inside that place, you see the 1910 facade on the outside.
Right.
You walk in, and you are transported into the 21st century.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the video boards, all of the technology that you would expect in a state-of-the-art building, but it's still intimate. And still carries all that history it has with it. So it's a wonderful place. We had a wonderful time there last night. We had a little concert there, and the kids came out from Howard and from all over the city. And many people who came to our event had not been in the theater before. And so, again, this notion of introducing people to some of the assets that we have in the city that they might not otherwise be familiar with is a big part of what we do.
Eric, can you talk at all about any new projects on board, anything coming on in terms of whether it's sports, entertainment, or otherwise?
Sure. Sticking with the entertainment theme, we just recently were able to do a deal with the Rock the Bells Festival, which is probably the longest running hip-hop music festival in the country. They're celebrating their 10th year this year.
On the 28th.
The 28th and the 29th. Out at the festival grounds at RFK. It's
Right.
Too many acts for me to name, but let me say this. I'm 42. My oldest son is 12 years old.
Yeah.
There is something for both of us. And he has made it clear that he wants to be out there, and I want to be there, too.
He wants to be on the scene.
So,
Papa want to be with him.
Exactly. So 2 days, going to be great. We're looking forward to having them for years to come out there, and folks are getting really excited about that, as are we.
Back a few months ago, Mayor Gray really raised some eyebrows, brought the attention of one of the struggles from, many in the community now find themselves supporting. And that is the changing of the name of Washington, D.C.'s football team. Let me tell you, you may or may not be aware, but I have been a strong proponent of changing the name. I have the appreciation I have for where that name comes from is from a genocidal, torturous, murderous history of Native Americans. And how whoever might want to attach something good, grand, and noble to the name, there are those that are offended by it, and there is a history there that makes a case that the name should be changed. Mayor Gray stepped out and voiced his concern that in the event that the team wanted to come back in the city, the name may be an issue. Anything you could share with us about, any talks, prospects, or anything else that the team might come back? And why would, for example, just from an economic point of view, why would a team out there, 80,000-seat stadium, want to come back into a city?
Well, we the running joke we have is that and I will respect the stance and not use the name, but the Washington football team has not enough Washington in it right now with their practice facility in Virginia and their stadium in Maryland.
Right.
We need to put more Washington in the Washington football team. But I think, all owners want new stadiums. Let's start there. That stadium in particular was built very quickly before Jack Kent Cooke passed away.
Right.
And it's a nice stadium, but I think when you compare it to its peers of a similar period, Baltimore and Charlotte in particular,
yes,
many find a lot lacking. I'm not saying necessarily I'm one of them, but many have said that.
Sure.
The team bears the name of the nation's capital, and that is a very strong kind of intangible benefit.
Right.
And playing in downtown or in the city, I think would be a great boon to them, as it was for most of their history. So, there are many folks, including our mayor, who would like to see them come back. Part of this whole Olympic bid idea is that maybe you end up doing what Atlanta did and building Turner Field as an Olympic venue and turning it into a baseball stadium. Right. So you build an Olympic venue, and then it becomes a football stadium.
When you talked about the Olympics, when we were talking about the Olympics, I remember being at the 96 Olympics in Atlanta. And I also remember I was at the NBA All-Star game here in D.C. And I think it was the next year. It was one way or the other. It was here in D.C., and then the next year I think it was in Atlanta, or vice versa. What I remember is how much better it was hosted here in D.C., the NBA All-Star game. Then in Atlanta, it's legendary as to what the nightmare was. So, I bring that point up that if Atlanta could host an Olympics, then Washington, D.C., combined with Baltimore, can certainly host an Olympics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, it can be done. And London just hosted it. And you think about cities with rich history, but with also the seat of the government. for that country is obviously in London. And so if they could do it with the security concerns or what have you, I think we could do the same thing.
You heard it here, folks, first. The 2024 Olympics is going to be right here in Washington, D.C. Eric Moses said so. No, I said so. But Eric is certainly enthusiastic about it, and we're enthusiastic, man, about having you on the show. Thank you so much. Look forward to getting you back at some point. Coming up in our next and final hour today, September the 7th, 2013, is Dr. John Ellis, Harvard graduate, adjunct professor at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care, and someone who, by example, you're going to have an opportunity to see and hear him talk about his amazing 100-pound-plus weight loss, the perils and problems that existed with him as he weighed 335 pounds plus, and the tremendous benefits that have been derived by him going on a program that he is going to be more than happy to share with you. Tell all your friends to take a look. Be back in a few moments on The Rock Newman Show.
My baby drives a pole handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a pole handcuff.
And now, The Rock Newman Show.
Folks, welcome back. This is our last hour. Today, September the 7th, from Busboys and Poets, the Langston Hughes Room. My guest in this hour, Dr. John Ellis. You've heard me say before, he's an adjunct professor at the University of the Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care, Harvard University graduate. Harvard University, we affectionately call the White Howard. We don't call Howard the Black Harvard. Dr. John Ellis, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Rock, it is a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be in D.C. I have 3 sisters who live here, one of whom graduated from Howard University and who remembers you as an RA from back in the day.
Okay.
But we won't go back that far. Uncles, aunts, extended family. I grew up in New York. I've been coming here all my life. Many wonderful family meetings and dinners here in Busboys and Poets, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. Your story is truly a fascinating story. There's much to talk. We have an hour, but it goes by terribly fast. So I want to get into really many things. But part of what I'd like to do is to get into a little of your background in terms of you are a person today that has an incredible message. You, by example, a lot of folks talk the talk, but Dr. John Ellis has walked the walk. At one point, let me ask you, what was your highest weight?
My highest weight was 337.
337
and
pounds.
I'm 6'2".
6'2", 337.
Okay, so it's 337, and we'll talk a little bit about BMI. That's about 43. We'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. And today, 205. And I've been able to maintain that for the last 3.5 years. And that's as a result of changing my habits.
Yeah. We're gonna get into all of that. Tell us a little bit about Dr. John Ellis. I want to kind of go back now.
You want to go back?
I want to go back and go like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Queens,
okay,
New York City, near Kennedy Airport, a place called Rochdale Village.
Okay.
Went to school, public schools and Catholic schools in New York City. Mm-hmm. Got a scholarship to a prep school in Connecticut.
Okay.
And went there for high school. And, I was blessed while I was there to be able to get a scholarship to go study in Spain for a year. Now, people do a lot of that today, but in whatever that was, 1971, that was pretty unusual.
Right. Well, here's what I want to talk to you about as it relates to your issue of having been, if you say BMI, body mass index, as it relates to having been obese at one point. Obesity is defined in body mass index as what number?
Well, body mass index is a relationship between the weight and the height. So the weight divided by the height squared is done in the metric system. Quote-unquote normal weight is 20 to 25 BMI. 25 to 30 is considered overweight. And over 30 is considered obese. BMI is not perfect, and you'll find people who will say BMI means nothing.
Right.
I don't believe that. But let's think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? When he was competing, I'm sure his BMI was up in the 30s, and he didn't have an ounce of fat on him.
Right.
And he had some help with that, too, right?
Sure.
LeBron James,
right.
BMI is 27. You see any fat on LeBron?
Right.
No. Right? No.
Right.
So it's not perfect. If someone is muscular, someone's athletic. But for most people, that BMI number, and you can go on any website, you just Google BMI calculator, you can see. Now, a lot of us, I have a dear friend, older woman, she says, I go to the doctor and they want to weigh me or ask me what I weigh, and I say, it's none of your business.
Yeah, hello.
And I'm like, no, this is important for the doctor to understand what's going on with you. So I guess BMI is not perfect, okay? Sometimes we call people overweight. Sometimes we say they're, under tall. But either way, that gives a good idea. There are other measurements. There's a ratio between how many inches you have around your waist to your hips.
Sure.
Your waist should be slimmer than your hips. The bigger your waist gets, that means more belly fat you have. And it's the belly fat. Now I'm putting on my doctor's hat.
Sure.
It's the belly fat that really gives the inflammation that can cause the heart disease and the stroke and the impotence and all the stuff that can happen. So if baby got back, that's better than having it up front. Okay. And I get an amen from some of the people out there in the audience.
Right. Okay. Now, so where did yours start? And I want to give a frame of reference. I've struggled with my weight all of my life, so to speak. And I was a skinny little kid. I went at 7 years old for an emergency appendectomy. And the doctor at the time out in Clinton, Maryland, told my mother, said, he has to have it. I actually was blind. My appendix had burst. The sac had burst. Poisons had gotten to my bloodstream, and I couldn't see. Wow. Which, the little knucklehead kid I thought it was cool. I mean, I was trying to find my way around. You know, they were all alarmed and everything. So I go and I have to have an emergency appendectomy. Now, the doctor told her at that time, he said, you know, his eating habits are really going to change after this. And I don't know how scientific that was or anything else. I just know the story is true. And said he's going to gain a lot of weight. And I went from being a skinny 7-year-old to a chubby 8 and 9 years old. And from that time, I remember going into the Heck Company store and other stores and my mother having to buy me chubby clothes. Now, I thank God I was an obsessive participant in sports, all sports. So I guess, you know, that kind of helped me along the way. Nevertheless, there's always there's a struggle. Now, I remember part of what was the Bible in our house. Finish what's on your plate. And I think that's so many in our community, that's, you know, sort of scripture. Finish what's on your plate. So going back to your childhood, where did your weight issues begin?
Well, let me make a comment about the plates.
Okay.
Because back in the day, the plate was this big. Okay,
Right.
The plate you were supposed to finish was this big.
Yeah.
Plate people trying to finish today
Right.
has probably twice as much area on it. So
Yeah.
our plates have gotten bigger. You think about the big gulp and all that stuff. Everything's gotten bigger. Fine. Going back to me, I mean, when you said going to the store, I took a picture there having to go to the chubby section.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting, so I was, and my sisters, you know, there's a lot of obesity in the family. You know, I was bigger than most of the kids in the neighborhood. But what's so funny is if I go back and look at those pictures today,
Right.
I look like a regular kid today. Okay, most of the other kids in the pictures look scrawny by today's standards because
Right.
we've all gotten bigger. But yeah, so I was, you know, I was a tall kid. I was a big kid. I played sports. Not like you did, okay, but, you know, regular
Sure.
sports,
Sure.
you know, baseball, basketball, football. My dad had played, you know, what do you call semi-pro or minor league baseball, okay? Dad didn't really have an issue, but his parents did. You know, I remember being teased some, and, you know, certainly that bothered me. And I remember one time, I think maybe one year I didn't play football, and my mother said to me, or football season was starting, she said, you know, I really like it when you play football. And I said, why is that, Mom? She says, because when you play football, you know, you lose weight. I didn't realize, okay? But again, you know, this activity that our young people don't have as much today can help. So I was bigger than most of the other people, but when I look at myself, I look normal by today's standards. So even from the beginning, you know, in my life, I was usually bigger than most of the kids.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about tall, I'm talking about
Sure.
why. And I think that probably got worse when I got to college, because when I got to college, I stopped playing any kind of sport.
Okay. Now, let me ask you. So you're bigger, so this is kind of hereditary.
Some
Genetic, hereditary. And did you start then in terms of the family meal or at the table with what became an Achilles heel that lasted? And I asked that question again, given a frame of reference, using self-reference for myself. For example, we were never a family of, you know, you have the meat, the vegetable, and the starch. Our starch was always fried potatoes for breakfast, some kind of potato for lunch, and some kind of potato in the evening with whatever else we had. And I am probably somewhere, if not a full junkie for potatoes, somewhere in that neighborhood of junkieism.
Yeah, I have to give my mother credit. So my mother's people from Charleston, South Carolina, and so she was, there was the fish, the okra and tomatoes and corn, the rice.
Getting hungry up in her. I'm glad I'm at Busboys and Poets.
Mom did a good job. I mean, if anything, I got more in trouble out in, I don't want to call it the street, but out in the world. Hostess Twinkie pies, that sweet tooth. That's the thing that got me in trouble. So, yeah, I would hear the stories, finish that food. My mother would make liver once a week, She would make turnips. I used to hate that stuff as a kid. Yeah, I was made to finish that.
Right.
But I think really more of my issue was not in the house, even though there were starving children in India, starving children in Biafra, and we had to finish the meal because of all of that. It was really the stuff that was out in the world.
This whole thing with weight, it is really must be a fascinating study for you in doing what you have done. And you have just an incredible website, howilost100lbs.com. Folks, go to that website. You will find morsels and snippets and volumes of information that will help you with whatever your weight challenges might be. How I Lost, altogether, howilost100lbs.com. But I was saying, it's a fascinating study, and even as we talk about this, and I thought about what, for example, my struggles have been. There are a couple of things that come to mind when I was talking about like childhood. I remember Oliver Gray. He was the fastest guy in the neighborhood, so he was cool because he was the fastest dude. He could run faster than any of us, and we all, loved sports, so he was a big shot. He said one day, he looked at me and said one day, boy, this boy is getting big, and he said it with admiration. And part of the psychology is the next time he saw me, I wanted to be bigger. So I remember eating more and more. That was one thing. The other thing, man, I went up to my aunt and uncle owned a little store in kind of Bear Joint. And I went up to a function they had one day, and maybe I was 10 years old at this time. And it was the first time I had ever seen shrimp. Well, one, it was just the sight of it was just beautiful. And then when I tasted it, I loved it, but my aunt slapped me on my hand and say, that's for the special company. You can't have none of that. And something in my head was like, one day, damn it, I'm going to be able to eat all the shrimp that I want to eat. And I'm telling you, man, there's a period in my time where I think I consumed so much shellfish that, and part of it, it was a love for how it tasted, but I think there was a sense of defiance and how it all goes, what all goes into our craziness in terms of, the eating habits that we have.
Oh, yeah, and I think some of that, too, is about reward, right? You're rewarding yourself for something you didn't have in the past. And I think a lot of us, life in 2013 is stressful. Yeah. And a lot of us reward ourselves and soothe ourselves with food, of all sorts. And for different people, it's different things. I mean, for me, I talked about the sweets. Cheese was something that,
I hate cheese.
And I loved cheese because I stopped eating it because I love it so much, right? But everybody has different things that they Jones for.
We're going to talk about these Joneses when we come back. We're already up against the clock right here. This is the Rock Newman Show. Dr. John Ellis is going to continue to share his incredible example of having lost 120-plus pounds and kept it all. He's going to tell us all about how he did it and how you can do it too. Just a minute on The Rock Newman Show. Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Folks, welcome back. My guests, I'm telling you, go either while you're watching this, if you've got another computer sitting beside you, go to howilost100pounds.com.
LBS.
LBS. 100lbs.com. If you have two computers. Now, don't go there while you're watching us here. Watch the real deal and then go. This is live. Go to Memorex when we get done here. But it's a fascinating website that I think you'll really enjoy. You'll find a lot of information on. And we were talking before we went to break about sort of the psychology of eating and some of what I've identified as, you know, some of my issues and why I've struggled. And Doc was saying that, you know, we eat sometimes, obviously, you know, let's say to reward ourselves.
Right, and the other, and to celebrate. But the interesting thing is, back in the day, the food that we would have once a month to celebrate got to be once a week, got to be every day. We didn't used to, most of us did not used to eat cake every day. Okay, I remember as a kid, it was a big deal for my grandmother to take me to Woolworths and sit at the counter on Saturday. I think that's how I got younger sisters, right? Because I'm the oldest. So Grandma would come pick me up and take me out to sit there at the counter and have a Coke that was probably, I don't know, 8 ounces, right? Or maybe have a little malted milk, and that was a big treat.
Right.
And now we have people who think, you know, it's normal to consume that stuff all the time. So we're constantly rewarding ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because life has gotten, in a lot of ways, more stressful.
You know, you bring the subject up about proportions and size. And indeed, times past, the proportions were much less. You know, there was a lawsuit against the tobacco industry, which, you know, made a lot of lawyers rich. I don't know how many people actually benefited from it, but state after state after state went after those in the tobacco industry. and what was revealed in those lawsuits were really some intentional stuff, that they were putting stuff in there that they knew were addicting, that they lied for many, many years. Now, there's a whole nother subject about the U.S. government's complicity in that, and the political strength from the South that were tobacco growers and all that. It was criminal. It was criminal what the growers were doing, and the complicity of the government and allowing them to do it to destroy the lives of American citizens who was paying the government to look out for them. So there's a whole issue there. Now, there's a lawsuit years ago that I heard about someone trying to sue McDonald's. Well, I don't even know what happened in that lawsuit, and I'm just thinking about it as we're talking here. You know, the food industry is absolutely culpable. Now, there's the body of wisdom that would say, you know, we're all responsible for our own individual choices, and I understand that, and I'm a proponent of that also. Now, with that being said, the barrage and influence of the food industry on its direct impact on the obesity of the citizenry, if it ain't criminal, it's ugly.
And I agree with you. I think it's a little more complicated with food than tobacco. Okay, tobacco is addictive, and it's hard to argue that it's good for you to smoke. Right. Eating is more difficult. You need to eat to live, and the question is then, what are you going to eat? Right. And so the content of the food has changed, added sugar, fat, salt. Food scientists sit and figure out what are the combinations of sugar, fat, and salt that are going to make you eat more and more. That is true, which is why one of the things I tell people is if you want to lose weight and maintain weight loss, you have to shop with a list in a grocery store and buy food that you cook. And I know that's hard with all the pressures and time pressures that we have, but if you buy prepared food, either in a restaurant or in the middle of the grocery store, the stuff that sits on the shelves forever, you know, that stuff tends to be prepared in a way to make you want it. And they consciously do that. But there's another part. So that's the food side of things, right? They push that. And yes, there's the idea that I don't have to buy this stuff or you don't have to buy this stuff. And I do think there's some people that get addicted, you know, to certain foods. That is true. But, I mean, there are other parts of this. And another part of the equation, you were talking about being an athlete, is physical activity. Okay. We don't have as much physical activity as we used to. And one of the reasons I point that out is Coca-Cola sponsored a study because they want to say, hey, it's not all us. And they sponsored a study that just looked at measuring how much physical work the average person did today versus, say, 1960. Okay, we do much less work, and they say the amount of physical work that we do, there's so much less today that it can account for a lot of the weight gain. So it's both of those that account for that. Think about, when was the last time you pushed a hand lawnmower? Right. Okay? Right. That's some work. Right. Push a vacuum cleaner around the house. Right. Okay? Most of us don't, you know, now we got automatic vacuum cleaners, right? They got a little thing that goes around. All of the things that we do have been automated in a way. A lot of us have desk jobs, we sit. So the food is obviously an issue. and I just say, the thing is, you have to be reliant on yourself to read labels, because I don't care what the label will say that this is whole wheat Cheerios. Yes. Yeah, they put some whole wheat in there. Or it'll say gluten-free that. Big emblazoned on the box. Right. Look on the side. What's the first ingredient? Sugar. Second ingredient, sugar. You see sugar. Fructose. Fructose, sugar. Right. Now, if you go in Whole Foods, they make it sound fancy. Evaporated cane syrup. You know what evaporated cane syrup is? Sugar. Okay, so they make it sound fancy there. If that's in the 5 first ingredients, you have something that is probably not good for you to be eating on a regular basis. But they make it look pretty on the box. I don't know. I mean, with the tobacco lawsuits, I think it's very straightforward. I think it's going to be hard. I don't have any relationships with any of those companies. I think it's going to be hard to have those lawsuits.
Let's come back to you, and you know, because you are a great example. Okay, so you went to college, you did your thing. When did you start realizing No, let me ask this question first. What was it that caused you to gain so much weight, and you're in the medical profession?
Well, that's a great question. And I think what that speaks to is that knowledge is not the answer. It also speaks to the fact that most doctors are not trained much in nutrition,
yes,
obesity, prevention.
Yeah.
We are, for the most part, trained to treat disease when it happens.
Yeah.
So, for example, I practiced anesthesiology. Patient comes in, overweight, knees bad, needs a knee replacement. We know how to do that, okay? And the way the American healthcare system is set up, it pays to do that. It doesn't pay so well to sit there and counsel people and talk to people and spend time with them, and, you know, folks live in food deserts, and how do you address all of that? That stuff is more complicated. So, yeah, I mean, I had the knowledge. I was sitting there on a daily basis taking care of people with heart disease, from overeating, obesity, also a lot of smoking as a cause. And yet somehow seeing this stuff happening in front of me, right, doesn't necessarily make it, you know, from, how can I say, from the brain to really, to be internalized. And, you know, that work is stressful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm up there with patients having liver transplants, heart surgery.
And you're the person that is preparing them and sort of putting them under. Well, let me say something about that, because this anesthesiology thing. I've never been one to take drugs. Like, I never smoked weed. I never had any kind of, you know, illegal drugs or anything like that.
I won't comment for myself.
However, I like anesthesiology. I like anesthesiology because when I've had multiple surgeries. When I've gone under, I've always understood why people got high, because if it felt anything like I felt going out, I was like, damn. I better not even start one, because I do have a compulsive personality.
Are we going to talk about Michael Jackson? Is that where we're going?
Well, no. Let's don't. So you were looking at these patients that were coming in with all these different maladies, and you as the anesthesiologist had to be personally hands-on with them. But that wasn't translating for you in that you were practicing behavior that was self-destructive yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's stressful work. I mean, I was working with patients that might have a 5 or 10% chance of dying. Big aneurysm surgery, things like that. Things can go wrong. Things happen quickly. You know, these patients are going to the ICU. And, you know, I have since learned better coping mechanisms for the stress. But a lot of times after I had a difficult case, you know, I'd go down to that vending machine in the basement and get a Haagen-Dazs.
There you go.
You know, and that would, and you know, I had to learn other ways of soothing myself, as it were, rather than doing that.
And so you are doing all of that. You're making, obviously, bad choices. Were you one of those, because I'll testify, that Monday you was going to start it, the next diet, and then on the first of the month you was going to start, and then when in the first of the month came, where you really had to wait till that Monday, but there was always going to be a diet started next week?
Something like that. I think probably even worse was this. Start out the beginning of the day, I'm not going to eat. Okay, which is probably the worst thing you can do. I mean, I tell people all the time, eat breakfast, eat healthy stuff before you get too hungry. So rather than saying next month I'm going to start, I was like, today I'm not going to eat. Period. Right. Well, you know, then by the end of the day it's, you know, trying to shove everything you can in your mouth.
End of the day is Right. Tell me what R was. What was that?
For me, pizza. Okay. You know, in Chicago, deep dish pizza's, you know, I don't know, several inches deep. And guess what? You can now call up, or today you can go online, right? www.senditover. Right? And you don't have to do anything. Right? It just shows up. Right? There
so
you go.
give me an example, and I'll give you one of mine if you like.
Right.
But give me an example of sort of, you know, one of your best, worst days. And by that I mean, you know, whatever the stress was, you know, that had you where you were jonesing.
Right.
And you going to satisfy this Jones, and you consumed what? What was one of your biggest consumptions that you can remember?
I can just think about going down to the hospital cafeteria and getting, you know, 3 scrambled eggs with 3 sausage. You know, that would kind of be my 11 o'clock thing, couple of Haagen-Dazs in between cases. You know, the other bad thing about a hospital, this is changing some now, is you're captive. I say being in the OR is like being in Vegas. There are no windows, the lights are always on, things are always busy, and they're pumping oxygen in. All right? you can't leave that often. So the people who sell the equipment and the drugs and stuff know that, and they bring food in.
Yeah, some of the worst food.
Some of the worst food. So every time you walk by, ooh, the ortho people brought this. Ooh, these people brought that. Yeah, come on in, we got this. And, you know, unless you make plans. You know, I used to kid one of the guys I worked with. I said, you know, you bring this little paper bag with your sandwich in every day. We probably save a couple $100,000 over a career by doing that, by buying food. But also he's like, I got to bring this food with me because otherwise I'm going to eat whatever they put in front of me.
Right.
And a lot of us have work environments like that. So, you know, what's the worst? I would say was that pizza at night, that big deep dish pizza that I would call and say, well, I'll have some today, and then I'll have some tomorrow for lunch, and somehow it would not make it from
Wouldn't make it through the night.
Wouldn't make it through
You
the
play
night.
that Gladys Knight song, help me make it through the night. Right. And you had to wash it down with something.
You know, this is a funny thing. I liked to drink grapefruit juice. Now, most people say grapefruit juice is bitter. I loved it. I drank a lot of it. It's full of sugar. I mean, people talk about
Not
the grapefruit
knowing,
diet. People talk about the grapefruit diet.
Yeah.
Anything in excess, right?
Right.
It's like, I would drink, you know, a half gallon of grapefruit juice every day. So that's what I would
that
wash
you got
it down.
off the shelf, not that you were sitting there squeezing.
Right. Listen, if you eat a grapefruit, right, that's not bad. That's good for you.
Right.
And you got to work and you get all the fibers. When you go to the store and you get that stuff that's been processed and there's no way I could eat, you know, in that grapefruit juice, there was probably, I don't know, 12 grapefruits that went into making. There's no way I could sit there and eat 12 grapefruits, but I could sure sit there, go, and drink the juice. That's one of the things I say to people. Eat the fruit. Try to stay away from the juice.
Just stay away from the juice that you get from the store.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, so you're kind of doing all of this of what you do, you know, satisfying these Joneses. You got to be 337 pounds.
Correct.
What was the light that went off that said, oh, hell to the no, we got to turn this around?
There were a couple of things. Number one was just a generalized thing. I developed sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is where the structures in your neck shut off while you're sleeping. People who snore are more likely to have sleep apnea, but not everyone who snores has it. It's not just snoring and making noises. It's the cutting off. And when that happens, you get less oxygen to your brain.
Right.
And you wake up, your body says, what the hell is going on? Wake up. Don't sleep well. So I had this sleep apnea. I was tired all the time.
Yeah.
I was prescribed a mask. It's called the CPAP mask. It's continuous positive pressure that's supposed to blow and keep your airway passages open. I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't sleep with it. So I was tired. You talking about being sick and tired? I was just tired all the time. That was number one. That's a sort of general thing. And I started thinking, well, maybe I need to have stomach stapling, gastric bypass surgery, because that would help me lose weight and help that with that. But there was another specific thing that happened that really said, I got to do something about this. I went to Rockefeller Center, New York City, just before Christmas with some family members. You know where they have the ice skaters?
Sure,
They're showing the ice skaters. And we're having lunch watching the ice skaters. And I sit down in a chair, and then next thing I know, my behind is on the floor.
Oh, Lord.
On the floor. Loud crash sound. Everyone, what happened?
We just had a boxing right on in the first segment, so you knocked out the chair.
I knocked out the chair. By the way, much respect to the Spinks. I'm sorry I didn't hear the whole story there because I really admire the brothers.
Yeah.
On the floor, tremendously embarrassing. Tremendously in front of I don't know how many people, you know, more than are out there in Busboys and Poets right now. And I said, oh, my God, this is this. So that was a seminal moment in saying, this has to change. You know, and then I had an uncle, Howard University medical school graduate, who said to me, John, you know, you're not going to be around if you continue this way. So you got to do something about this.
That was your moment to say there had to be a change. We're going to come back and talk about what that change was.
Okay.
In the next segment of the Rock Newman Show, after these few messages. Stay tuned.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to the last segment of the Rock Newman Show. I have in studio Dr. John Ellis, adjunct professor, University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care, and someone who weighed 337 pounds and now is down to what?
206 today.
206. So the calculation, that's 221 pounds.
Well, 126.
I mean, 120, what am I talking about? It's 126 pounds.
Yeah.
126 pounds lost, and has kept it off now for about 3.5 years. And we're talking about all things nutrition, health, and weight loss. And, you know, I read something at one point that said that it really should be defined as not losing weight, but getting rid of it. Because you lose something, you want to try to find, that means you might want to look for it some more. And when you lose weight, you don't want it to come back.
Yeah, and a couple of things about that. There's some people who say in sort of the obesity treatment world that the first thing we need to do is not gain weight. Because, I had a trajectory of going up and up. So first you want to stop the weight gain,
yes.
Right? That's number one. And, yeah, I mean, if you're losing something, in some ways you have to replace it with something else. Mm-hmm. All right? So if that is walking, if that's taking up a sport, you were a baseball player, that may be harder to play organized, but maybe join a basketball league. You got to substitute something else for the joy that you get from food. That may be time with family. Instead of saying the family's going to sit down and eat this big meal and go lay on the couch like we used to do when I went to my grandma's house on Thanksgiving,
right.
We're going to eat a little meal and we're going to go for a walk in the park. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you need to have substitutes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now, those of us who continue today to struggle with weight, let's start to talk about, in the time that we have left, your suggestions and recommendations. Somebody's out there is 5'9", 5'10", and weighing 275 pounds. Man, woman doesn't really matter. And they know that, and like you said earlier, it is not enough to have the knowledge, because you clearly, as a medical professional, had the knowledge that the choices that you were making to go down and do the Haagen-Dazs and pizza after your procedures, on an intellectual academic level, you clearly knew that was counterproductive and sabotaging yourself. But you kept doing it anyhow.
Right.
So, talk to us about how you changed that around, and how those of us who haven't found that formula to make those changes yet can do so.
Okay. I was fortunate. I was thinking about getting the gastric bypass surgery, and I'm not against surgery. I think there are people who get big enough and have enough medical problems and they get stuck where that may be useful. I didn't want to do that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go spend 2 weeks at a weight loss program in Durham, North Carolina.
Do you talk about it?
Structure House. Yeah, I have no relationship to them. But, not everyone can go away for 2 weeks and go to the treatment center. They got a book. Mm-hmm. Read the book. Mm-hmm. Structure House. You can go on Amazon or wherever. Structure House. And they were about planning, not willpower, planning. And that's a lot of what I've tried to put into my life. So that means eating earlier in the day.
So did you make a distinction between willpower and planning?
Distinction between willpower and planning. Mm-hmm. That is, all of us have a limited amount of willpower. Right. All of us, and life is stressful, and if you don't know ahead of time what choice you're going to make when you're stressed, you choose the Haagen-Dazs bar. Mm-hmm. If you plan, and I know, and my friends laugh at me, I eat the same breakfast every day.
Now.
Okay. Now. So I don't, and I eat it early. I don't have to think about that. Right? I know what I'm having for breakfast. There's no decision. I don't have to waste brain time or anything. I know what I'm having.
And that is what for you?
I have oatmeal with protein powder, cinnamon, and cocoa to give it flavor. Plus, both the cinnamon and cocoa are healthy things.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Skim milk. Sometimes hard-boiled eggs, something like that I can have early in the morning that has some protein in it.
Mm-hmm. So the most important element you're saying in terms of planning is to have a plan.
Is to have a plan, right. To know, and some people recommend that at least one meal a day, you know what you're going to have. You keep it the same every day. You may vary others, but have one meal a day picked that's going to be the same. That's number one. Number two, I talked about shopping and cooking, having good choices in the house, right? So that you can cook stuff, maybe in the freezer. Stuff doesn't go bad. It's in the freezer. You can pull it out. You can cook it. So certainly planning is an issue. I travel a lot. I travel with food. Folks laugh at me for that, but I do that because it's important to me. I have so much more energy now. Right. I think my thinking is clearer. I like this part of my life. I can do more stuff. I can be more active. I can go hiking and stuff I couldn't do before. Walk all around this city, other cities, a wonderful thing. So, but having a plan is key. That's number one. And part of the shopping, as I said before, is to shop for food that is what's described typically as on the periphery of the store, the produce, the fresh meat and stuff. Right. The stuff that's in the middle of the store, that's in the big, pretty boxes, that'll sit on the shelf forever, is probably not the best for you. So that takes time.
As in, probably not the best for you, because if it's in the box, if it's in the can, there's a whole lot of processing going on.
Exactly. And I'm not going to say I never eat canned. Sometimes I eat canned vegetables, I eat canned beans. You got to do what you got to do. Right. All right. I realize that people have constraints of time, but it's and going to a restaurant. I was able to order salad here in Busboys and Poets and ask them, I don't want the dressing. I don't want the little fried noodles that went on there. Please hold that. And most people will accommodate you. So, but again, I walk into the restaurant, I kind of already know what I want. I have a plan. This is what I'm going to ask. And sometimes I don't even ask for the menu. I just say, can you give me this? Or what's the closest you can give me to? And one of the things I eat lots of vegetables. Lots of vegetables. I eat a pound of veggies at lunch and a pound of vegetables at dinner.
A pound?
A pound.
Wow.
A pound. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's expensive. I can't afford that. I go into my local store, cabbage, 49 cents a pound. I eat sweet potatoes. Right? White starches, in general, go to sugar very quickly.
Right.
Sugar goes high. Sugar falls fast after
Potatoes.
that. White potatoes, white rice, white bread.
Bad.
Better off. Brown rice. Sweet potatoes rather than white potatoes. Sweet potatoes don't give you that sugar high as much, which is probably why you don't like them. And when I eat the sweet potatoes, I eat them without the candy. Some people
understand.
Just sweet potatoes. Sometimes I'll put some cinnamon on there to give it flavor. That gives it a little sweetness, and I enjoy that. Now that's hard at first.
A pound of vegetables.
A pound of green vegetables.
So when you and I go out here,
right? I got my food waiting for me right there.
I'm just talking about something else. When you and I go out here and have lunch,
right?
And I order the catfish that comes with the collard greens,
right,
and the corn cake,
right.
So what I have to do is order 3 or 4 of those catfishes and corn cakes, so I can give you enough to make for a pound of green vegetables.
Or what I say to them is, listen, I want this. Now, can you give me a side extra of greens? Can you give me a double order of greens?
Right. Now, you said you brought your lunch with you.
No, I ordered.
Oh, you ordered?
I ordered from Busboys.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just sitting there as soon as we finish.
Okay,
I'm on it.
You're going to throw down.
Eat early and often, yeah.
Okay. Now, that's another thing that certainly is emerging that the thought is, it used to be 3 hots and a cot,
Right.
But that was when there was, as you said, so much more physical work being done. And pretty much you hear nutritionists and trainers now to say the more ideal way to eat in terms of your body metabolism and everything else is multiple small meals.
Yeah, I think, Pete, that's going back and forth, and it may be different for different people. I know for myself, I try to keep from getting hungry. So that means I eat my breakfast, my oatmeal, and then around 10 o'clock, I get hungry. I have a piece of fruit.
Okay.
And then I eat lunch around noon. And
now, I know you love pizza. You said a piece of fruit, not pizza fruit.
Yeah, a piece of fruit. Right. A piece of fruit. Yeah. A piece of fruit, then eat my lunch, usually something between lunch and dinner. If I get, again, I have done this without going hungry. I changed what I ate. Okay? So you eat that pound of vegetables, that's going to fill you up.
Right.
And you get used to that.
Right.
Now you got to spice it up. Onion. Peppers, garlic, hot sauce. Okay, people say hot sauce is full of salt. There is more salt in a piece of bread than there is in hot sauce. So hot sauce has some salt, but that hot pepper slows the metabolism, actually gets the brain a little high. Okay, who likes hot sauce out there?
All
the hands go up.
Everybody in here.
Everybody, right. So the hot sauce, that for me, but all of those spices, giving flavor with spices, not sugar, fat, salt. So I eat meat, a little bit, mostly fish, some poultry. I'm not vegetarian. But if you look at Iron Mike Tyson, lost over 100 pounds. He went vegan. Okay? Bill Clinton. Had heart attacks, heart surgery, all kinds of stuff, went vegan, lost a bunch of weight. His daughter shamed him, said, Daddy, you need to look better for my wedding. Right. Chelsea got on his case. He went vegan, lost a bunch of weight.
Sure.
So I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian, but I eat lots of vegetables. Greens, sweet potatoes. I call it the Mandingo diet. That's, I have a young lady who works for me who's born and raised in Senegal. That's what they eat. They eat that okra. They eat that rice. They eat a lot of vegetables. If they eat the sweet potatoes. If we went back to eating like our roots back there, as well as back here in the South, I think we'd be doing well. A lot of folks think today that McDonald's is a normal meal. And that's not what we have eaten for most of our history.
Bad stuff. So if folks go to your website, what's the greatest value that comes out of a visit to your website?
Well, I on the website and also on the Facebook page, I post different things. Sometimes it's sharing my own experience. So, for example, I tell that story about breaking the chair in Rockefeller Center and how that helped me get started. And other times...
Now, when you fell on that chair, did you actually fall on the ice?
No, this is inside. We're watching the skaters. Right.
Okay.
I even think
did you get up on your own? Somebody had to help you up? Or?
I was too embarrassed to remember. I do think some of the skaters stopped skating so they could see what was going on inside. Made me lose my place there, Rock.
Yeah, that's all right. No, we were talking about going to the website.
Yeah. So I'll tell those stories, right? And then, there's a whole lot of stuff in the media about obesity, weight loss, health, et cetera, that I will try to, give some interpretation of. Because one of the challenges is, and I know this because I do medical research, is that one study will say one thing, one study will say another, and try to discuss why that may be that you read different results or different things may apply to different people. And then I'll give specific, recommendations. Like, for example, one of the reasons, and black and Hispanic folks are more obese than the rest of the population. And I focus particularly on folks of color in this country. You just had the March on Washington here, and two of my sisters went, and they said, to see the people struggling to walk. That we got problems. We got civil rights problems, but we got health and wellness problems as well. And I'm looking at pictures up on the wall there of people marching back in the day. They could walk. I saw a lady the other day. I was ordering a salad in a bodega in New York, and she told me, "You eat that?" And I said, "Yeah, my belly used to be out to here." And she says, "Oh, well, okay, if I eat that," I said, "Yeah, you got to have some protein too, some meat, some beans, some fish or something." And she said, "What else do you do?" "I walk." She said, "I hate to walk." You hate to walk? What would they have done in Montgomery during the bus boycott if people couldn't walk?
The problem they hating to walk.
Right. We had to walk.
It's interesting you bring up how it's a yin and yang in terms of the medical research, because today something is good for you and tomorrow something is bad. One of my many Achilles heels is chocolate, for example. And so I was off chocolate for a minute, and then I read this incredible report about chocolate wasn't so bad for you. As a matter of fact, it was good. I was right down Haagen-Dazs, got that Swiss chocolate, got that chocolate almond, and of course I knew that was wrong, but it gave me just a wonderful little excuse.
Well, you see, there's the chocolate and there's the Haagen-Dazs. Right. And I eat chocolate. I try to eat dark chocolate. 80% plus. Now, if you're not used to it, it can taste a little bitter. Milk chocolate, stay away. White chocolate is not even really chocolate. Okay, so forget that. And, that's why I put the cocoa powder in my oatmeal. I get that taste. It's good for the heart. It's good for how you feel. So I'm not going to tell people not to eat chocolate.
It sounds to me like the central theme coming out of your life experience here. And, again, you're not some lifelong, hardly thin guy that's writing a book. You understand a lot of the psychology of the addiction to food. You've lived through that. For the most part, you've conquered it, and certainly, behaved in a non-addictive way, because it seems to me that's ultimately what it is, of behaving in a non-addictive way. Again, we recognize on an academic level that when we have that fifth piece of fried chicken, that really is not a good thing to do, but we have it and we enjoy it. So when we do that, that means you are practicing really a self-destructive, addictive behavior. And it's about backing up from that and moderation.
Moderation, and again, I'll say planning, not willpower.
Planning.
Okay, so if I'm an alcoholic and I'm trying not to drink, maybe I don't need to hang out in the bar all night long, right? Maybe I need to go to the bowling alley. Now, they'll still be drinking in the bowling alley, but there's something else going on there. Or maybe I need to go to the movies. It's the same kind of thing. I try to keep myself out of, for lack of a better word, dangerous places. The other thing is that I've learned how to have conversations with people. I appreciate you've made this wonderful meal, but because I no longer have high blood pressure, which I used to, I no longer have sleep apnea, which I used to, I no longer have prediabetes, which I used to, with all due respect, and I love you and I feel your love for me, but please, I'm not going to eat your food. And having to get comfortable with that. Because a lot of people are like, ooh, I can't make Aunt Martha upset here. Aunt Martha cooked this for me. I got to eat it.
So now you were 337 pounds and you started to come down. You started to make, much better food choices. Obviously some exercise, introduce some exercise into your life. Now, when did those things start to disappear, such as the sleep apnea? And again, the sleep apnea that you're talking about is a malady where folks wake up like they're choking and there's less oxygen to the brain, ultimately you wake up in the morning feeling much more tired.
Correct.
So your weight loss, you feel corrected that?
Yeah, I would say that, and I know this from my medical practice. When people have a gastric bypass operation, they lose 20, 30 pounds, their sleep apnea a lot of time gets better. Their diabetes starts to get better. So I would say I noticed a difference after probably 30 pounds that I was feeling more energetic. I didn't seem to be having as much sleep apnea. Probably, got rid of the sleep apnea after losing about 100 pounds. But, every little bit helps. I mean, the other thing for me is that just the brain is sharper, and there's studies that show this, that as you lose weight, your brain functions. Now, some people who know me best might argue with that, but, at least I feel that the brain works better.
Okay, all week long, knowing, we were going to have you on as an anesthesiologist, part of what I've got to ask you, I mean, folks, I hope you've gotten a lot from this conversation here today about, a real life story about someone who's gotten a lot healthier, lost a lot of weight, and is as I said, a real example. I want to just ask you something. When we have surgery and when we have anesthesia, when we have anesthesia, what the hell is it that feels so good?
It is
Can you explain that to me?
It is probably propofol. Propofol is the white stuff. Oh, well, no, let's break it down. I hope we have time. So people say, propofol killed Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Propofol did not kill Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Propofol given in a situation that it's not designed for and not monitored in the proper way results in. The reason trained professionals like me use those drugs and do years of training is because in the absence of proper management, they can be dangerous.
Okay.
People stop breathing, etc. When you know what you're doing and have the equipment and the monitoring, anesthesiology has gotten exceedingly safe. What probably feels good to you is the propofol. People wake up feeling kind of euphoric. And so that's what Michael was saying. Hey, I don't know if he went for plastic surgery, had this, and said this feels great, and says I want this forever and the day thereafter. There is no role for propofol outside of an OR or a hospital or surgery center. Okay?
There's a great role and a need for Dr. Ellis to be on the Rock Newman Show today. I really appreciate you coming here. This is very informative. Folks, I hope it helped you. It has helped me. And again, I want to say thank you.
And I want to thank Mia Thrash for hooking us up.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mia. Next week, same time, same place, The Rock Newman Show. Folks, have a great day and a great weekend.